Hey folks, how are you all? Let me know if you can hear and see everything all right here. Just getting settled in. It's a sunny, brilliant sunshine morning out there today. It's about 0 when I first woke up. Thanks, Stevie. Looks like you can see me anyway. Anyway, brilliant sunshine. Had to close all the curtains on the sunny side of the house because otherwise it just blows the camera out. I think it's supposed to be about 15 degrees Fahrenheit for the high today. And it's plenty warm in here. The heat wave coming off the little stove, of course, is making everything quite toasty in here, even though there's 4 windows open a crack. Okay, just wanted to talk for a second to be sure. Yep, image and sound okay. Thank you. That is good to hear. You can hear and see me. Awesome. Hello to everyone in the chat. Now I am going to ignore the chat completely for the next little bit because I've got a whole list of questions. These came from I posted on all the places I use social media asking for questions. So primarily that's MeWe.com. I also have an account on Float, Gab, Freesteading, pretty much everything that's not the big tech stuff. And some from previous videos, both on Odyssey and on YouTube. So if you're wondering where the questions came in from, this list came from one of those sources. Now, if you're here live in the chat, that is awesome. And if you want to ask a question that's not on this list, that is also awesome because there's also a lot of chat back and forth between you all. If you don't mind, if you have an actual question for me, try to put at least the first word or two or sentence or whatever in all caps if you can. So when I'm done with this list of questions, I can go back through and hopefully fairly quickly find any questions that are being asked there. And I am already getting too hot sitting beside the stove. So we're going to have to open that window a crack more. Okay, it is lovely to have you all here. Welcome, welcome. And I had a goal of kind of trying to do at least one live stream question and answer thing every month to catch up on questions. I used to type answers to every single question I got, and I guess I still feel kind of bad or guilty that I can't do that, but there are just too many now. It was taking 4 or 5 or 6 hours a day, every single day, and I couldn't keep up. And finally I was like, okay, this is now at a point where I simply can't do that. So this is what I'm trying to do. Every month or 2 or so, or whenever I can make it happen, we'll do one of these and try to answer lots and lots of questions. Okay, so starting off, these questions are not in any particular order. They are in whatever random order I happen to copy them out of the places people ask them. I learned to better have a pot of tea here. I got a whole pot with me. Isn't that pretty? I got that secondhand. Somebody was getting rid of it, and it's got this cool little strainer thingy in it that lets you use loose leaf tea and steep it. Anyway, I found my throat gets dry when I talk this much. So here we go. First question, Richard Givens said he's a cat lover, asked about Velcro and wondering if she is a little bit Norwegian or Maine Coon or just a domestic long hair. Looks very comfy in the snow. A second ago, she was actually sitting on the windowsill watching me. She's not there anymore. Anyway, to the best of my knowledge, Velcro is a purebred Wyoming ranch cat mutt. I have no clue what she is. She came from a nearby ranch, and she is fluffy and pretty. I doubt she has either of those breeds in her just because they tend to run large, and she is a very teeny weeny cat. She's back on the windowsill. Velcro, do you want to say hi to everybody here? Oh yeah, should we just pull you in the open window? We don't normally do this. Velcro is a very, very teeny weeny cat. She looks bigger than she actually is because she is so fluffy, but if you made her wet or shaved her fur or something where you could actually see her size, she only weighs a couple pounds. So I kind of doubt she's any of those things. Okay, you can go back to your sitting in the sun. Sorry to interrupt you. Yep, go back on your windowsill. I know you like sitting there in the sun. You're fine. We have no clue where her breed heritage may be from at all. Nancy Colbert, pardon my mispronouncing some people's names here. I'm sure I will. I will do my best. When will we build a bigger house? We hope to start on building our small house, hopefully this spring. That is pending our time and energy, materials availability, and money availability to buy materials, depending what prices they're running at the time. SKM said on the one of the honeybees in the winter, maybe some of the dead bees found some distance from the hive were dead when they were pushed out of the hive and their bodies were just blown that far by the wind. Possibly, though they tend to settle in the snow. Some of those actually either were carried by another bee to there and dropped, or I think a few of the ones that were furthest from the hive actually flew there themselves. I don't know if they made a mistake in their calculations and got too far away and got too cold and couldn't make it back, or if they were ones that were at the end of their life and were dying and kind of went off to do that in peace by themselves. Possibly some bees also blew around. Calico Cat wants me to tell about our utilities. Do we have a well? Are we on grid with electric? Is the wood stove the only source of heat? Welcome. You must be a newer viewer here, and that is wonderful. I have, this is covers a whole bunch of questions actually. I have, I think, over 820 something videos now on the channel, whether you're looking at on Odyssey or YouTube or wherever. And I have done my best to organize them so that everything is findable. A lot of these frequently asked questions that I get, I have done lengthy, detailed videos answering. There's a playlist called Frequently Asked Questions Start Here. So for any of you guys who are newer and wondering about some of this stuff, that covers, I don't know, there's a dozen or two videos on that of the stuff I get asked all the time. There's also playlists just on gardening, just on utilities, just on appliance reviews, just on tiny house stuff, just on wildlife. You get the picture. And I've tried really, really hard to not use, I mean, I try to come up with interesting titles, but not to use clickbaity titles like, it snowed 2 feet, you won't believe what happened next, or, 4 things we grew in the garden, number 3 will blow your mind. I don't do stuff like that. I try to label them so that they are findable if you have a question. So if you go to the channel homepage, again on Odyssey, YouTube, wherever you want to watch videos, and go to the little search bar, type in utilities, you will find a whole list of playlist or video list detailing all the stuff I've done on that. We do have this tiny house has always been off grid. We have a small solar setup. I've done multiple. Now I have a kitty paw. I don't know if you guys can see that coming in here to see you all. Detailing how the solar system works, how we set it up, how it's worked over time, all of that. We don't have a well here. We have gravity-fed spring water, and the wood stove is the primary source of heat. We also have a backup propane heater if we have to be away from the house for longer than sorry, Velcro is distracting me. I need to keep that curtain closed so I can focus on you guys. Then the wood stove would stay hot. But there's tons more details about all that stuff, so go look that up. But that also, like I said, applies to a whole lot of these questions, and it's wonderful to have new people here all the time that haven't seen the older videos. But I have tried to do very detailed, thorough answers to all that I simply can't take the time to do here in a live stream. So if you have a question I don't get to here, it may be because it's one of the very, very commonly asked ones that there is already a lengthy video or series of videos covering, so go check that out. Gary Shee said they find that there's some black dust, fine particles in their nose after sitting around the wood stove for several hours. It needs to open the door to put the firewood into it. Also put in sweet potatoes wrapped in baking trays in the hot charcoal, which means the door needs to be open for a minute or two. Have I had similar experiences, and how can I work around this? I have never noticed black particles or anything like that in my nose. I will say anytime you heat with wood, your house is probably going to get a little dustier from my experience, both because there's some amount of dust and wood particles that come into the house on split wood. There's some amount of little bits of ash that escape the stove when you open the door to reload it. I just find there is a little bit more dust, but I've never noticed black particles like that. Possibly it'd be worth, I don't know your situation or your setup, it may be worth checking if you're getting a good draft, because in general, if you're getting a good draft, even when you open the door, if a little particle swirls out, it'll kind of swirl back into the stove and go up the chimney as well. So if it seems excessive, again, I've always see some dust when you're using a wood stove, but if it seems excessive, it may be worth checking on, are you getting good air circulation, good draft up your chimney? I hope that's helpful. That's all I can say without knowing more details about your situation. Francis Asked, did the bee fly that was on the snow or did it just die there? On that video, there was multiple different bees actually sitting in the snow. I believe most of them flew back to the hive because the next time I came back and looked, most of those were not sitting there any longer. Katie Bug 1957 said, now that I have a husband, do we use the shower or is it still for storage? Yes, that's another one. Go look up the using the shower for the first time or something video from almost a year and a half ago now. We have moved all the storage that I had in there because for many years I had it completely stuffed into a corner of Clay's shop so that we can use the shower. Somebody, Melon Pushkin said, how does the fan work? They were talking about the little fan over on top of the wood stove. It's called a Peltier connection, I believe. It basically works. It doesn't require any external electricity or anything coming into it or being plugged in. It generates a small electrical current because of the difference in temperature between the base of the fan and the top of the fan. And so as long as the stove is hot, it spins. If you look on Amazon or you could look up Peltier connection, I'm sure you could get a much more detailed scientific explanation of how that works. There are lots of fans. EcoFan might have been the original one doing those, or maybe that's just the original brand name I heard of, but there are quite a few brands that make a fan like that that just sits on a wood stove and blows air without needing to be plugged in. Let me see here. I want to be sure I'm not missing any questions on this list. Take the Ride said, what do I know about the new so-called vaccines for honeybees? Also, they're concerned. Also, do I feed anything to the bees in winter? No, we don't feed the bees in the winter. They went into winter with good stores of their own honey and pollen, and hopefully we'll have plenty to get them through the winter. I know a lot of beekeepers feed sugar syrup. That's something that we have, I would say, chosen to probably never do is feed sugar syrup. The only instance I can imagine feeding a hive here is if we actually caught a swarm and then like the next day it was really cold or snowy or rainy for several days and they couldn't get out at all. I would give them some of our honey from one of our other hives to give them something to eat till they could go out and forage again. But no, our bees build up excellent honey stores for the winter and they're eating their own natural honey and pollen collections, not anything artificial. Oh, I heard recently about somebody inventing a honeybee vaccine. I don't know a whole lot about it. I would look at it like I do most others. If you do your own research into the actual history of them, I don't think you find most of them actually beneficial. Many are harmful. So I wouldn't be too prone to being excited about that myself. Midwest said, hi, I noticed there's a hand crank grain mill on my Amazon associate page. I was wondering if I would do a review video about that. Thank you. I never have done one just on that. It is, thank you. I'm totally blanking on the name of one of you lovely subscribers who gifted that to me quite a few years ago now. We do use it quite regularly to make flour for bread, flour for, like rice flour for making creamed rice, other things you guys have seen me do. I am very happy with it. It takes a lot more physical effort, of course, than having a plug-in one, but I like it a lot and do recommend it. I would acquire one again, even if I had to go buy it myself instead of being given it as a gift. Maybe one of these times when I get time, I'll do a full review just on it. Joey Bear said, what color, blue, and brand is the paint on the beehive and home? So they're different paints or stains. It's actually a stain on the outside of the house here. I wouldn't really call it blue. I'd call it more of a dark gray, but it does have a hint of blue to it, depending on the light. It's the one on the house on the cedar siding is a semi-transparent wood stain that went over the cedar. It's a custom mixed color, just a very, very dark gray. It looks almost black in the can before you put it on because it's semi-transparent, so then the lighter wood shows through. It's basically the same color is on the beehive, and I used, I'm going to draw a blank on the brand name, a non-toxic indoor paint. And as you can see, the one hive that's been painted for 3 years now is flaking off because I painted it even before we ever got honeybees. And I had just done a single coat. So this next summer, I'll probably need to do some new coats on there. I would not use the oil-based stain near bees because there's some off-gassing of chemicals that would probably be harmful to them. We have the same color on the shop, the same color on the chicken barn, but again, each different material has a different, like the shop is steel siding, and that came painted that dark gray from the manufacturer. I don't know how they do that, but they're all just a very, very dark kind of blue gray in varying materials. Hopefully that's helpful. Margot Roberts said, I got several of these. This makes me laugh, especially with Velcro watching you guys from the window. Opal, her smellless cat, almost has her nose on the screen of the iPad as per usual. When she hears the music, she comes running every single time. On the same note, Aline Steele said their cat Lulu loves the birds. She jumps up by the TV and paws the TV screen. When the birds go off screen, she goes behind the TV looking for them. They have a fan named Lulu. And Debbie Russell said she took a picture of my cat watching this video. She was mesmerized or terrified. I think that was the one on the mountain lion video. Kathy VW Smith said, my cat is laying on the floor in the sunshine watching your mountain lion on the 65-inch TV, wishing there was some mountain lion noise to see if she would run. Wonderful footage. I can see why humans go missing and are never found. I love these messages. Apparently this channel has a lot of feline fans, which I think is awesome. And quite a few of you have sent me pictures of your cats watching the screen as they watch these videos. And I think that is just lovely. J.R. Kreiner said, do I think the snow will get as deep here in our new place as it did up in he said the meadow, I'm assuming I mean the clearing in the woods before. That depends on the winter. Last year we had a really, really lame winter with almost no snow. This year it's starting to look pretty respectable. It's, out there in the untouched areas, it's hitting me about mid-thigh. Will it get up to the eaves? That happened on a bunch of record-breaking winters we had in the 16 years I've lived in Wyoming. We've had quite a few very, very deep winters. Hopefully we get another one here because I love deep snow. But right now our snowpack at this particular spot is about the same as it is in my old spot. Neither place this winter is as deep as some years have been, but both places are doing better than last year. Same fella asked, or person, I guess I don't know if that's a man or a woman, have I ever heard of a store called Lehman's in Kidron, Ohio? They're a huge store that caters to the local Amish and off-grid people like yourself. Yes, absolutely. I think the Lehmans are distant relatives of mine. I mean, like distant, we're probably fifth cousins 3 times removed or something, but I am related to the majority of Lehmans in the Plain community, I believe, including the folks who started that store. It is one I've been aware of my whole life. My parents ordered from Lehmans, I think, before I was born. And yes, they're an awesome store for a whole lot of things that are pretty impossible to find currently in the modern day world from anywhere else. Penny Peace Cornelius said she's always seen hives in a row. Is there a reason I have my hives far apart? Yes, there is. That is mostly usually done, sometimes depending on the terrain where, but for the ease of beekeepers who are accessing their hives all the time to treat them with chemicals, to feed them artificially, all that stuff. Since that's not what we do, I chose to spread the hives out. That seems more natural to me. I've never in nature seen various bee colonies set up their colonies right next door to each other. So they have a little more space, spreads out our property's not that big, but spreads out the foraging and pollination and so on a little bit. It also makes it a little less likely for a bee to get confused coming back and go to the wrong hive accidentally, because if you do ever have a hive get sick with something, bees going from one to another can transfer diseases. And if we ever get, because we do have some farming around us, if we ever got something really unfortunate, overdrift of someone else spraying something, I would like them to all be in different spots, so we hopefully would never lose all the hives at once. So that's why they're spread out. Somebody else asked about feeding them. I already answered that. That was on the bees. When I was shoveling snow, a couple people asked, did Burley dig up something in the garden? I wasn't watching him while I was shoveling snow. He loves to, I'm going to assume this is what he was doing. He either loves to find an ice chunk, like something I've thrown out of one of the water bowls or the duck pan or something like that, and pounce on it in the snow and drive it down in, and then dig it up and then drive it down in. He just thinks that's entertaining. Or sometimes he'll do the same thing with either sticks or frisbees, but I'm not sure exactly what he was doing. Zapfan said, do we still have the same batteries? And if not, how long did they last? Yes. We are pretty much at the end of the expected lifespan for them from what was stated when I purchased them. They are now going on 9 years old. I would expect to maybe get another year or so out of them, but they are currently still working and we still have the same ones. That was, I'm assuming, on the solar power battery bank. That's what I was addressing. If you meant something else, I'm sorry. Um, Chuck Izowski said, for the times when the wind blows the ground clear, a snow fence would cause the blowing snow to build up and keep the ground covered. We did have a really, really violent windstorm here, nearly 100-mile-an-hour winds over right around Christmas, toward the end of the year there. And I believe that's what he's referencing. Several people made similar comments. I am very familiar with snow fences. They're used in quite a few places in Wyoming. A lot of the state is actually kind of on the other side of the state, is much, much windier than us normally. There was a fairly unusual wind event here. Not something I've seen. Actually, I'm not sure if I've ever seen a wind like that event in the past 16 years. But in this particular case, I'm not sure a snow fence would have stopped much, seeing that it not only scoured our property bare, it scoured many other hundreds of acres, the mountainsides, the mountain tops, and there's not a much bigger snow fence you can build than a mountain range at 11,000 feet. So I'm not sure it would have helped on this one. Linda Leal asked a related question. Are you planning to plant a tree windbreak or set up a temporary snow fence to prevent losing snow cover? We have planted trees and bushes all around the edges of the property. They are mostly all still very small, but the eventual hope certainly would be that, among other things like producing food and shelter for birds and shade and water retention and just many other benefits, that they would also create a windbreak around pretty much the entire property perimeter. And we will continue to plant as many trees as we have time to get to and can afford to do. Somebody had asked me, I don't know what they were talking about. They're like, oh, if you won the lottery, which isn't likely to happen since I've never played a lottery. And I don't know what they said. If you won $100,000 or something, what would you do with it? And I didn't even hesitate. I would buy $100,000 worth of bigger trees and put them on this property tomorrow. That is what I would do. But we don't have that much money, so it'll go at the pace we can do. Alice Rafferty asked, this was on the video about mixing our own feed for the chickens. So am I feeding them mostly a grain-fed diet, no pellets? I did show in there, I've given them so far some free choice. It's always there. Pretty high quality layer pellets. They do not hardly ever choose to eat that. A bag lasts us quite a few months, and we have 21 birds out there right now. They have it if they want it. They apparently don't need it because they eat all the fermented and sprouted grain. And then the other things like the in the winter, the suet cakes, any chopped up fish guts from the freezer that we give them, all those kinds of things. Pellets seem to be by far their last choice. Ellen Schwarzkopf said, how in the world can I wear a t-shirt to shovel snow? Amazing. It has always amazed me just a little bit when, and Ellen may not have followed the channel for this long, but when people assume that I have not figured out how to be comfortable in the climate in which I live. Guys, we live over 6,000 feet above sea level. It is, when the sun is out here, it is very intense. Also, when you're doing physically demanding work, whether you're shoveling snow, snowshoeing, splitting firewood, any of those things, you work up quite a sweat. If I'm wearing a t-shirt outside when you see snow all around me, it's because I'm hot and sweaty, and layering up would actually make you wet and eventually very cold. That is why in a cold climate like this, we wear lots of layers so you can put them on or take them off easily as the sun comes out or the sun goes behind the clouds. But yes, when I'm working physically hard now, it'd be very different if I just sat down out there to read a book. I'd want a lot more layers on, but when I'm working, I am usually hot. Eka Suzillo said, do I mow and mulch micro clover or bag and toss it away like mowing grass? This went way back to a video from last summer that I did on planting micro clover in the lawn area, yard area around the tiny house, and somewhat back to one I'd done a long time ago about having clover in the yard in the old clearing. I have never bagged or tossed away any grass clippings. So yes, I mow, and when I do mow it, it's just mulch back into the ground, just like I have always done with grass. If you wanted to, you could bag it, but I want all of that going back in and mulching the ground. Somebody else actually went on a whole, it's funny somehow when this happens on older videos, went on a whole tirade on both those videos about how this is a terrible thing and clover is not natural and clover is not beneficial to bees and I should quit buying Chinese clover and supporting the Chinese government. And I need to, realize that if clover grows, the land is degraded and terrible and I should fix that. That was over the course of like 20 something comments. I don't know what the person was talking about. This land here is very degraded. It was when we bought it. We are working to heal that. The land in the old clearing was absolutely not degraded by farming in any way. Nobody in all of human history had ever lived there or cultivated it before me. I don't know about whether China sells clover seeds or not. The ones I got came from Hancock Seed. I believe they're in Texas, if I remember correctly. And you can tell me that bees don't like clover, but I've got hours and hours of photos and videos and way more of me watching the bees all summer long, enjoying it, both our honeybees and lots of kinds of wild bees. Rye Carlson asked, why am I against soy? That was on the video where I was mixing the chicken feed again. I'm not against soy. If I could get soybeans to actually grow here and grow our own, I would absolutely eat them, love them. I grew soybeans growing up in my parents' garden. They're delicious, roasted or steamed fresh and popped out of the shell. The reason I try to avoid putting soy products that I can buy into the chicken feed and for the most part corn products is because of the amount of chemicals normally used in their commercial production, and I prefer to avoid that. Also, some people, thankfully not me, seem to have allergies to either the soy or the way it's commercially produced and have it can't eat eggs from chickens eating those foods. That hasn't been a problem for us, but that's just something to be aware of if you've ever had a problem with that. Matthew said, how many square feet is my tiny home? It's about 164 square feet on the inside. It's another one that there's a whole video detailing every dimension in here if you want to look that up. Ken Suazo, our tree yielded 40 pounds this year. The robins weren't around at the deer either. Both tend to get their fill and leave us usually about 10 pounds. Anyway, choke cherry jam jelly syrup is super dark. Yellow orange berries are not ripe, so we don't use them. Leave them to ripen. And inform me that they're not choke cherry trees of different colors, just ripe or unripe berries. This may depend where you live. There are different varieties of choke cherries that grow in different places in the country. But in our area, there are very few, but there are. This went back to a way old video I'd done on making choke cherry syrup. There are some blonde choke cherry, like they look like if you go to the grocery store and buy Rainier cherries instead of, say, Bing cherries. Of course, they're teeny weeny because they're choke cherries. We have some Rainier cherry colored varieties that are absolutely ripe here. If you eat choke cherries, it's not too hard to tell if they're ripe or not, because even when they're ripe, there's a reason they're called choke cherries. They have a pretty astringent taste, and they really are not edible unripe. But there are quite a variety. One article I looked up said they can range everything from almost purple black to pure white. I've never seen any that light, but there are different varieties, and so that may vary in different parts of the country. Patricia Mora asked, how far does my brother live from me now? One of my brothers moved to fairly close to us this past summer. He is a few miles from our place. Jamal Ginsberg said, what happened to the old van? Looks like an upgrade. I've answered this question several times now. That was set up to live in full time, and because I wasn't really because I was staying too busy with our other projects, wasn't really traveling and sleeping anymore and really utilizing that. There was somebody else who needed full-time housing because housing is still a very difficult issue in this area. So I sold it to that fellow who lived in it full-time, and I'm driving the old Toyota now that one of my other brothers helped me put a new engine in. So now the engine's not quite as old as the rest of it, but it's fairly old. Joanne Donnelly asks if I've tried Azure Standard for lentils. Quite a few people mentioned Azure Standard. I have checked their prices for things. They're usually, if I, average it out over 20, 25, 50 pounds of stuff, they're within $1 or $2, one way or the other, of the prices in my local grocery store. I am aware of them. That just doesn't seem worth doing the ordering that way. But I know a lot of people like them, and depending what you have available, that can be a very good spot to get things from. Somebody at Hearttree asked, am I able to pick up wheat notes at the local LDS Bishop Storehouse? I'm not LDS, and if somebody else knows a different answer to this, I will be curious. We have a ton of neighbors who I guess I could ask one of them who are. If you're not familiar with that, that's all more commonly known as Mormon, but Latter Day Saints. From what I know, at least here, the bishop's storehouse is for church members, and you don't go there and buy things. They don't even take money. It's for providing for people who need help. You go in there and you can shop, but it's for free and it's open to church members. And I'm not a church member, so I'm not familiar with that option. I could be wrong on my understanding of how that works. Um, Christine Osborne says she'd read to feed a third a pound of feed per bird. This is talking about chickens again. How many birds do I have? Our 20 birds get way more bags store-bought feed than 3 cups. Is she overfeeding? I feed less and egg production all but stopped. I'm still learning. Thanks. This is going to depend on a whole lot of things. Your climate, the kind of birds you had, that's a huge one. I don't have any clue, Christine, what kind of chickens you have. Ours are Icelandics. They're a small bird. Adult hen is about 2 pounds. Most adult layers of more popular laying breeds like Rhode Island Reds, etc., are closer to 6 pounds. That's a bird that's 3 times bigger. They will eat significantly more, like most bigger creatures. So we have 21 birds right now of the chickens. And like I said, they have access to pellets, but they hardly ever eat it. Everything else they eat seems to be filling them up. That 3 cups of grain that I soak, ferment, sprout, and feed to them turns into a little over 4 cups. And that takes them an hour or 2 to eat through when I pour it out in that pan. So that seems to be plenty for them. But Icelandics are a very small breed of chicken. They're also very well known for foraging on their own for themselves, finding their own food and eating a very small amount. So that does not necessarily directly translate into how much you would need to feed 21 birds, depending what you have. So yeah, if your egg production drops and you feed them less, they probably need that much feed. Evie said, loves the thoroughness and attention to detail. One quick question. So during the winter months, when there's not much at all to free range, is that all you need to feed the chickens daily? Okay, this is another question on the same topic. Their chickens pick through their layer feed scratch mix, and a lot goes to waste. I had given some pellets or crumbles to our chickens when I first got them, and they didn't seem to like that well either. I am not a chicken raising expert. We're only our 2nd year of having them here, but ours do seem to really like the whole grains. That seems more natural to me, in that if I think of what would a chicken be doing if it was running around in the jungle where chickens originated, it probably wouldn't find layer pellets that have had grain all ground up and mashed back together and heat extruded in little pellet tubes and so on. So ours seem to really like the whole grains and seeds and such, and they do pick through it a little bit. Sunflower seeds are pretty much the most popular thing. Those get eaten out very first. The green split peas are usually about the second thing I see dissipate, and the wheat. Those are probably tied for second most favorite in our flock. The oats are probably the least favorite. That's about the last thing I see in there that they eat. They really like the lentils too. Anyway, that's what they have, and if they eat all their favorite things and then they're still hungry, they can eat their not favorite things. Carol Moulter said, can I get a feed store to mix the grain mix for me? I had gone and checked. There used to be quite a few local feed stores who did that and did custom mixes. My parents did, of course, they live 2,000 miles away from me, but when I was growing up, there was a local feed store who did a custom mix for our goats. They'd run off a big batch of, I don't know what it was, 1,000 pounds or something. They'd do that once a year, and we'd go pick up all the feed bags and bring them home. None of the local mills here anymore do that. They sell pre-bagged feed, or they sell big, massive bulk amounts, like going to a big dairy or beef cattle farm. So that nobody's doing that here, which is kind of unfortunate. Papa Jeff said he knows the focus, this was on the chickens again, is not necessarily being in the black. However, I also know you're thrifty. It seems like the chickens are earning their keep. Do the ducks, or are they just fun to watch? Maybe they clean up slug and bugs. I'm interested because my father-in-law is watching me. So the ducks, I need to do a duck update. They have not been very profitable for us so far. A couple of the things that have caused that are entirely not the duck's fault, like the fact that a coon killed 10 of our original 15. Like of the 5 that were left, 4 of them were males and therefore obviously did not lay eggs, and so on. So none of that is the duck's fault. Of our one adult female, she laid eggs every single day, first thing in the morning, from about 8 months old until sometime midsummer, and then she stopped, and she has yet to start again. And our other hen ducks that we raised, who are her daughters, they're almost 8 months old. They have not started laying. So in the year and a half of having ducks, we had one hen lay eggs very consistently for about 6 months out of that time. So that has not been entirely profitable. Of course, some of that is not their fault. We are looking into, though, because as much as I enjoy the ducks and they are funny and they just crack you up to watch them. I love having them around. If there is a better breed that's a better fit actually for here, we are totally happy with Icelandic chickens as being the perfect fit for our place. Not that they'd be perfect for everywhere and everybody, but the perfect fit for here. The Swedish ducks, we wanted to be able to do the same thing as the chickens. That was the original goal, have mothers that could reproduce their own. Of course, our mama duck, and there was only one, but she didn't want to sit her own eggs. One of our chickens hatched them, and their father duck tried to kill them all. That's not excellent parenting skills. But of course, we just had those 2 to work with. We didn't have any variety there, thanks to the coon. So that wasn't ideal. We wanted them to produce eggs and more of their own baby ducklings. And then eventually we'd end up with spare boys, and we would eat the extra boys just like we do with the extra roosters. And the few extra boys we have had and roasted, we just did not enjoy the duck meat. We have both had duck produced by other people that we really did like. And ours just seemed, no matter how they were cooked or slow roasted or anything, to be a lot of people complain it's too greasy. Ours was too dry and too stringy and kind of flavorless. And for the fact that they're a much larger bird, they weigh like 8 pounds versus our Icelandic roosters are like 2.5, 3 pounds. Most of that is just a great big carcass with almost no meat on it. And so for the fact that they eat gobs more, they haven't produced a lot of eggs, and they don't produce much meat, and the meat they do produce isn't a meat we like. We're not sure that that's really a long-term good fit for here. So I haven't made up our mind on this yet. And like I said, I realize that some of those features are definitely not the fault of the ducks, but we're considering possibly adding khaki Campo ducks in the spring. They are another one that's supposed to be pretty hardy. Why we picked the blue Swedish. I've seen conflicting things on people who say they never raise their own babies, and then I've seen people show videos of them doing just that. So it seems like there's at least a possibility. They are kind of like the Icelandic chickens, a much smaller breed, really good at foraging, and the highest egg-laying breed of ducks out there. They can lay up to every single day of the year, which would be nice. So that's a brief duck history. I'm not sure what we'll do with them. They have not worked out as well as I would have hoped. Oh, and of course, the other thing is with our temperatures here, the ducks are more work than the chickens because they splash water everywhere and they constantly need to be given water. The chickens sedately sip their water, and it's just not an issue. Very easy to take care of them. With the amount of the year, 2/3 of our year at least is below freezing here. Dealing with the water in the ducks is not something I necessarily mind doing, but we do want to get some benefit from that. Cul-de-sac Grocery Garden said this was a fantastic video. Well done. I know the breakdown. I would love to know the breakdown of total expenses and how long before the entire operation is paid for itself based on your yield. If I remember correctly, that was on the honey video based on local honey prices and the amount of honey we got from our hives this year. It would have been, I think when I had done the math, it would have taken us either 4 or 5 years to pay off buying the hives, buying the original bee nucleus, buying the honey extractor, etc. Hopefully, and that's not a terrible rate of return. Hopefully that will go up exponentially. Hopefully one or both of our colonies will still be alive in the spring. We'll be able to divide them further and end up with 3 or 4, have even more honey production without really any more investment. So it might get better than that, but that's kind of how that's working out right now. Watchwoman Kindred Spirit and Grace asks, are these rolled oats or oat groats? I believe that was on, again, the chicken feeding video. Those were just whole oats right out of the field. We got them from a farmer up the road. They're they're not rolled, or I guess I'm not sure if I know. I think oat groats is an extracted part. These were the whole oats, knocked right off the oat stems, whatever that is properly called. And the cob, which is corn, oats, barley, does that contain molasses too? No, that was just a mixture of the dry grains. And can I share the feed store I purchased the cob at, or the brand name on the cob bag? I don't remember the brand name, but it came from Baumgart's, which is a local-ish chain to us, and that's where I picked it up. And how do I prepare the eggshells for the chickens after cracking them in relation to feeding eggshells back to the chickens? I did a whole video on that. I basically just let them sit on the counter till they're dry, crumble them up, give them back to the birds. That is it. Alice Kane, excuse me, got a drip from the cold air and the hot air and all that stuff. I'm not good at sitting still, and sitting still is not good for you, so we're not going to sit still. Okay, next question. I think I lost my place in my line here. Alice Kane, chickens have always laid well and are beautiful. I can't believe the price of eggs up this way. Do I ever trade or sell my eggs, or does our group eat them all? Do I feed them all to the dogs, or do they get eggs too? And then various other kind comments. Anyway, yes, the egg prices have been fairly crazy here and in a lot of the world. I have occasionally, when we had back in early spring and summer, we occasionally had gobs and gobs of extra eggs, more than we could eat for a minute. And I had a whole list of friends who were like, we'd love some and we'd love some. And I traded some to our doctor and gave some to our neighbors and whatever, but we don't really have an egg business set up. They only got extras when we had extra. Roman said, have I looked into growing my own dry peas? I think they would work even in your growing season. Yes, that would be, again, I believe he was talking about for chicken feed. I'd like to try that. We can certainly grow like green sugar snap or hull peas here. They're usually still blooming and still producing fresh pea pods when everything freezes hard, and I mean, like down to 0 degrees and starts snowing. So I'm not sure that we have enough days in a growing season to get them to mature out and dry. But if I can get any to do that, that would be excellent chicken feed. And I would like to play around with if I can get any of the varieties. If I start a patch just for that, don't pick any, if any of them would ever have time to mature and dry to preserve for winter bird food. Erica Texaria said, she was wondering how many birds we have. Not sure they got a good count. We have 19 hens at the moment, 2 roosters, and 7 ducks. Hopefully towards spring, those are all numbers that will be changing all over the place as they hatch more of their own out. Linda Leal said, just wondering if I still use the soap nuts for laundry, etc. Yes, I still like soap nuts for laundry. Sometimes, depending how busy I am, I've used them, or just any other non-toxic soap. I'm not using a commercial like front-loading washing machine, so a little bit of suds is not a problem. Sometimes I'll just use dish soap. The only thing I'm trying to cut on clothing when I wash it is grease, just like on dishes. Works just fine. Don't go putting that in your front-loading washing machine. You will probably have an explosion. I don't know why they work the way they do, but you can't do that. If you're using a setup like us, it works just fine. Benny Simpson also asked on the chicken feed video, what's the problem with GMOs and soy? Do roosters taste different than hens? Roosters don't really taste different than hens. I'm assuming that was asked because I mentioned eating the extra roosters. We eat extra roosters because hens lay eggs, and too many roosters will beat the hens to death. And since you get approximately a half and half of each sex over time as the mothers raise their own, you end up with too many roosters. They're abusive to each other and the hens when you have too high of a proportion. And we want our hens to lay eggs, or if we have extra hens, we'd rather sell them to somebody else in the neighborhood who wants birds to lay eggs. So the extra boys end up getting eaten. A rooster will often have a little bit more meat on it than a hen, just because they get a little bigger, a little faster, like many males of any species, but I don't notice any difference in the taste of the meat. I don't necessarily have, I already explained the soy thing. I don't necessarily have a problem with GMOs other than I suspect that we don't actually know whether they're good or not. And to be clear, I'm talking about things where you actually take like genes from a tomato and a fish and put it in a corn, not selectively breeding corn or whatever for traits that you like. The main reason I try to avoid them is because usually the commercial products in this country anyway have been modified to allow them to be soaked in lots of chemicals, lots of herbicides and pesticides, and that's mostly what I want to avoid. But I also suspect that we have no clue because they haven't been around that long and they haven't been studied very well or thoroughly or by uninterested people to even know the effects of the GMO modifications themselves. Nicola said, beautiful video. Must have missed a few updates because I didn't know Ariel had a new dog. I believe she was talking about Tana. I don't particularly have a new dog. Tana is Clay's dog. I mean, not that both our dogs aren't both of ours, but Tana is a blue heeler. She's a very dark colored blue heeler. And she has been Clay's dog since she was a little teeny weeny puppy. I think it was one of his family members raising her, and she didn't have enough milk for all the puppies in the litter. And anyway, he's had her since she was teensy weensy. She is 11 years old now and getting fairly old. She mostly, you don't see her in nearly as many videos as Burley, because for one, she usually goes to work with Clay. Whatever he's doing, that's what she's done her whole life. And two, she's getting old enough that whatever you're doing, she'd kind of just like to lay there and nap and watch you while you do it. She's not so energetic anymore, though she can be for little spells of time for sure. And you kind of have to watch out for that because she will want to like chase her tennis ball until she actually strains a muscle and hurts herself because she doesn't have much self-control there. But she mostly likes to sleep most of the day. Greg Penderay informed me that ducks fly south. I assume that he was trying to imply that therefore my ducks can't be here in the winter. Some ducks fly south. Some species in some places migrate. Where I live here in the mountains of Wyoming, we have quite a few species that never migrate, or some of them do and some of them don't. And I don't know how a duck picks whether it wants to be one that stays here all winter or one that flies to Florida or wherever else they go. But we absolutely do have wild ducks, from mallards to mergansers to golden eyes to buffleheads, probably a whole lot of other breeds I'm not thinking of right now that do live here year round. They are here all winter long. There are certainly some kinds of ducks or some ducks that migrate, but lots of ducks do great in the cold. Miguel George said, does anyone know if there are neighbors close by? That depends what you call close by. We certainly don't live in a subdivision. There's nobody like right outside the windows. We absolutely do have neighbors. I think the closest house is like a quarter mile, fifth of a mile, something like that from the tiny house here. We have neighbors all across. You can probably see in the background of videos, there's other farm buildings and houses off in the distance. A lot of the year, our closest neighbors are some horses that are in the one pasture, or sometimes, depending where they are at the time, cows that are in the one pasture. But there are certainly other people around the area. So it depends what you call close by. I'm not even sure where this comment came from, but on one of the wildlife videos of the whole elk herd, Guy Lee asked if it's very racist. He's heard it's racist in Wyoming. Is this true? I have met a handful of people who, in my entire life, who seem to genuinely think that the amount of pigment a skin cell produces somehow makes different people very different. That seems very weird to me. I believe I've only encountered people saying that via the magic of online stuff at times. I'm not sure I've ever ran into anyone. No, that's not true. I might have ran into one person in the real world, but that wasn't in Wyoming, who did seem to think that. I don't know. Seems like a weird belief to me. I think humans are all one race, though there's certainly different communities and backgrounds and ethnicities and colors and shapes and sizes. I don't know what else to tell you. Like I said, my throat gets dry here. Lady Ryan said on the elk, this is beautiful. What if there was a still shot of that elk bull on a hoodie or a calendar? I don't know that I have anything set up to print on hoodies or anything like that, but if you're not familiar, I do take lots of wildlife photos and really enjoy that. And if you go to Ariel Celeste photography.zenfolio.com, I think that's linked under every video somewhere down there under the show more as well. I do sell photo prints, canvases, mugs, whatever, of lots of wildlife photos. So that is an option. Thank you to those of you guys who have supported the work here by purchasing them. Linda Krager said, "So, do I know if the tracking colors are changed out as the animal grows?" Again, that was on the wild elk videos. I've never seen a collar. I'm not an expert on this. I've never seen anyone collar a baby elk. I've only seen them put them on adults, so I assume they don't change them out because the adult doesn't really change in size much at that point. You could probably look up wildlife groups that collar animals and find out more information from them. Faith and Hope said they enjoy the wildlife videos, couldn't spot any of the elk calves. In my experience, have I seen if other adults look after them? That video was from late fall. An elk calf at that point does look fairly close in size just as they're standing there to an adult, though an elk calf would still only weigh, oh boy, 150 pounds or something, whereas an adult would be weighing like 450 or so. But in height, they're getting close. So there were a lot of calves, but they were getting close enough to adult size. They didn't look teeny weeny compared to the adults. And no, at that point, growing young elk can generally probably take care of itself. It's certainly not any longer nursing from its mother, things like that. But if it still had a mother around, she would continue to teach it, here's a good place to go for this. Here's where you find water. Here's where this yummy thing is to eat at this time of year, and so on. But I can't say that I'm not saying it doesn't happen. I haven't personally seen another adult like adopt a yearling calf as its child. Bob Riley asked, how do I get the full page MeWe on his iPad? Right now, he only gets the narrow feed or phone version. I don't know. I've never had a smartphone or an iPad. This is my phone. My nieces and nephews think it's awesome because they've never seen one like it in their lifetimes. I don't know how stuff works on that. MeWe is an awesome social media network with no censorship and the whole news feed in order, no algorithms manipulating it. But I've only ever used it from a laptop. I'm sure you can probably find some video of somebody explaining how that works. I've just never used those devices. Kim Kennedy said they love canning and are surrounded by wild blackberries in the spring. That would be awesome. I love blackberries. It's too cold here for them. Have I considering too long a list of questions. I'm trying to talk too fast. Have I considered adding a bump out or two onto the tiny, put it on a slab or foundation? Also, instead of building an entirely new home, I could relocate the kitchen and add a second bedroom. It could. I guess I'd say we considered that briefly enough to decide that just wasn't a good fit for our setup. Right now, it's really nice that Fy Nyth here is still entirely mobile, could still be move down the road if we ever needed to. Don't plan to ever move her again. I think she will sit right here the rest of her life. But if there's one thing I've learned in life, things don't always go as planned. And doing any of those things would pretty much eliminate that possibility. Also, I'll talk in a minute when somebody asked about the plans for the house. You'll see why the plans we have for the small house wouldn't really work with the tiny house. And we'd like to keep the tiny house as is. It is very well laid out for what it is and how it works, and keep it as a guest house or that kind of thing. And so, no, we don't plan to remodel it in that way. Snow Andrews asked, are the two dogs friendly toward one another? Yes, Tana and Burley grew up together. Tana was an adult when Burley was a puppy. Clay and I have been friends for quite a few years. Man, I see that where is that light coming from? I think I need to close another curtain here. See if that helps a little. It just seemed like on my view of the camera anyway, it's blowing everything out too white. It is really brilliantly sunny today outside. The air is just glittering with diamonds because any moisture in the air is frozen solid, and it is beautiful, but it's very, very bright. But yes, the two dogs, Tana didn't grow up with Burley, but Burley grew up with Tana, and they are good friends. Linda Crusania said adding gutters would be an additional expense, but that it would be a done project and you never have to worry about icicles again. I think that was talking on the edges of the chicken barn, not the barn itself, even the yard, keeping the snow and such from drifting in there. Gutters aren't really used in this part of the world because whatever kind of roof you have, it will get snow on it, and eventually the snow will slide off and it will tear the gutters off. So I know they're used in lots of parts of the world where it rains a lot, but they just don't really work very well in deep snow country like this. And houses pretty much never have them here. Occasionally someone will put like a little 4 foot chunk right over a doorway if the whole roof sheds onto a door, but even those end up getting ripped off by the snow and tearing up the building behind them. Um, Shay Stem asked if I could have just driven with a flat. That was on the video talking about all the things I carry with me in the vehicle for in case of emergencies. Depends what you mean by could have. That was a flat. I was on a dirt road by the time I realized, well, I guess I had to discuss different flats. One time I had a flat that was just leaking air. I knew when it happened. Another car was oncoming. We passed each other, and I felt the tire hit a sharp rock, and I was like, pretty sure that was a sidewall puncture. I didn't want to destroy the tire. If I had kept driving, the tire would have been entirely destroyed. Another scenario, I was on a dirt road again, got a flat from something, and the dirt road was rough enough and noisy enough that I didn't realize it was flat until it already had destroyed the tire, which was unfortunate. But yeah, you can keep driving on flat tires for a while. You'll either destroy the tire entirely and make it unpatchable, unfixable, and then eventually you'll destroy the rim, and then I think eventually you'll destroy the axle, etc. So depends what you mean. I guess, yeah, you could have for a little bit. Mama Mert said they carry a DB power jumper, small and powerful. They also carry an air pump. Their jumper can charge a cell phone. Oh, the question was, she didn't quite follow how you'd use the cheater bar as leverage to loosen a nut. Can I explain or demonstrate? I didn't explain that. It's to go on whatever you have that's supposed to turn a lug nut when you go to change a tire. You usually have some little like hex wrench or angle wrench, but often the handle is about that long, and that's so it can pack handily in your car so you have it. But if you're like me and you don't have enough muscle to be able to turn the lug nut loose with that through the magic of how leverage works, when you just take that and slide the steel pipe over it, so now instead of the handle being this long, the handle is this long, you can put significantly more force on it. So that's what the cheater bar does. It works for all kinds of tools if you need to add more leverage. Gray Ghost said, why do people mount wood stoves on the floor and crouch to load them? Why don't you mount them up higher so they're easier to load? For me, 2 reasons. Heat rises, so I want my heat to start as close to the floor as possible, not start up here and then have the floor be way cold. And 2, crouching is really good for you. Squatting is actually a very normal human behavior that we don't do nearly enough of for the most part in the modern world. So I personally try to take steps to do a lot more squatting in my day, not less. Sherry Ashton said they live in a harsh winter climate as well. Curious about the mucklucks I have. She thinks they're custom handmade. Would love their opinion. I did a whole review on footwear, including boots. I think they're mentioned both in my general footwear review and in my winter clothing review. They are custom homemade. I love them. They were made for me by Shannon over at Northern Heart Designs. Her site is linked in both those videos, but if you just search for Northern Heart Designs, I'm pretty sure, and boots custom or whatever, she will show up. She has a very long waiting list. She's usually booked out at least a year. She does spectacular work. So if you go into looking for some of her stuff, just plan on that. Know that you're going to wait for a little while because she is in high demand. But I highly recommend them. I have already ordered a second pair from her so that I will have them when mine wear out. I love them. Best money I have ever spent on something to keep my feet warm. Show me what I need to know said, so the battery and the first aid stuff are impervious to the hot and cold the interior of the car experiences. I wouldn't say batteries are impervious to it, but that battery jumper pack I have to jump a vehicle, batteries don't hold heat well when it gets too cold for sure, but it has always held its charge and been fine. We get to the minus 30 Fahrenheit Celsius range here and it has worked fine. The first aid stuff, some of the liquid stuff may get a little slushy, but things like rubbing alcohol don't really freeze till, I don't know, it seems to me like rubbing alcohol has to be something like 127 degrees below zero. I'm probably totally wrong on the number, but it's a temperature that we've never experienced. And over time, of course, things like sticky stuff on Band-Aids or tapes do wear out or lose their stickiness, but they do that sitting in any cupboard. It's always worked for me. Jen S asked, how do I like the Highlander versus the van? I like a lot of things about just the way old Toyota vehicles run better than any other kind of ever driven. The Astrovan has the best amount of inside storage space for any small vehicle I've ever had. If I was a billionaire, I would get somebody who knew how to do this stuff to put an old Astrovan frame in that brown sand color that they were made in at one point. I know these haven't been made in 2 decades. To get one of them, put it on a Toyota pickup frame, a small Toyota pickup frame from maybe the 80s, and redo everything so that it was nice and new. That'd be my dream vehicle. Denise Constable said, I hate to ask questions because I know it's hard to answer. Is this my only form of heating and cooking? I believe that was on the wood stove. It is the primary form of heating. Like I mentioned, we have propane as a backup heater if we have to be gone longer. And that oven range back there is run on propane, though I certainly can do a lot of things on the wood stove as well. So we do have backup options. Moses said, there's another person who's surprised I don't wear some sort of hat. 95% of body heat will escape from the top of the head. I've looked into that actually. Heat escapes from all surface areas of the body approximately equally, but of course, being a curve, there's a lot of surface area on a head. Once again, I hate wearing hats. Some of you guys have heard me talk about this. I just hate things touching my head. I don't like sunglasses. They give me a headache. I don't like anything touching my head at all. It's just something that's personally irritating. Plus, when I'm outside in a t-shirt and it looks snowy, it's because I'm too hot, not because I'm too cold. Carolyn Christie said, would I take a picture of each of the roosters? She'd love to cross-stitch them. She lives in Colorado Springs. Yes, I've done that. Go to any of the places I am on social media. Probably the best one is MeWe.com. I regularly post photos, usually a photo or 2 or 3 every day of something we're doing around here. And quite a few of those have been favorite pictures of mine of our chickens, including both roosters. So you can find plenty of pictures of them there. And you'll just find me under Fy Nyth. Same thing everywhere you look. Same name. It's one nice thing about having something that no one can pronounce or spell is that at least it's unique. And when you find it, you pretty much have found me somewhere. Cooking Princess says, I want to say how well they take care of the animals and hope the idea goes well. Could I list the brand name of the wool pants? Those wool coveralls that Clay got me, they are Wyoming Traders brand. They're sold by a local, ranch work clothing store here in our area. I don't know where else they're sold. I did look. I think they have a website, so you can probably order them. They are a local-ish Wyoming company, and the ones I have are like the dark gray. They're a men's small. They didn't offer the coveralls in a women's, but a men's small fits my frame pretty well. And they're a little loose and baggy, but when you want to put lots of layers on, that's kind of nice. I do love them for doing chores on really cold mornings, like this morning when it was 0 out. They are very, very comfy. Megan Zupf said, out of curiosity, why are wild animals hung initially? Does it have something to do with the quality of meat in the end? And she thinks Clay would make a good doctor or surgeon. He might. He's very good with his hands, doing lots of useful building and all kinds of things. She's talking about when we were butchering the elk, hanging the meat. That is normally done not just with wild animals. If you go to any butcher shop that butchers chickens or hogs or cows or anything, the meat is hung just so that during that period the air can circulate freely around it and you don't have any surface that's like sitting on a floor or a shelf. You want the air to circulate evenly as the meat ages, chills, whatever it's doing. So that's the reason it's hung. That's not unique to wild game. Jeanette Scholl asked, can you use the fur for anything or the hide? You could. We have so far pretty much let the dogs eat it because we have been too busy to do other projects, but you can certainly cape out a whole animal, tan the hide, and use it as blankets, carpets, anything you would use hides for. We haven't personally got into doing that at the moment. Amy Zweber said, how do you store your 251 jars of canned goods when you live in a tiny house? There's another one. Go look up on wherever you watch videos. Where do I store food in a tiny house? Did a whole video just about that. And now we also have a little corner in the shop where we got room to put a few extra shelves. But as far as in the tiny house, it's the exact same as when I recorded that video. All over the place in here, basically. Female Crusader said, uh, is my way of, I think this was on canning cranberries, is my way, or one of the berries I canned this year, of not boiling the berries in the syrup. Is that called raw pack? Also, she can't tell, but is my steam canner an atmospheric or a regular? Yes, when you put whatever vegetables, meat into a jar raw without heating it first and then pour boiling water over it, that is called raw pack, I believe. I'm not familiar with atmospheric versus regular steam canners, so I'm not sure how to answer that one. It is a steam canner. It's not a water bath, and it is not a pressure canner. Those are all slightly different things, though the things you can can or steam bath are pretty much interchangeable. Or sorry, the things you can steam bath or water bath, you can do the same things. Pressure canning is a different thing. Again, I'm not familiar with those terms in relation to steam canners, so I may not be answering this for the what you wanted, but it's a Victoria steam bath canner. I think it's linked in the stuff I get questions about all the time at Amazon.com/shop Fy Nyth if you want to look up the exact one. Well, that's the newer version. I have one of the newer ones. I also have two made by the same company. They're the older versions that one I got at a garage sale, one I got from my mother, and they're older than me, and they don't make that exact style anymore. Auntie Pam said, thanks for the cranberry video. Did I do a ginger beer video? I did one on doing the homemade ginger ale kind of. It's not a beer, like an alcoholic beer. I mean, there's trace amounts of alcohol in almost any ferment you make, including things like sauerkraut. But yes, I did a video on the bubbly ginger drink that we like. Once again, just look up Fy Nyth ginger drink, and I believe it'll be the first thing that shows up. Belinda Perkins Brooks said, great video. I have a question. How do I clean the flue? Love your dog, by the way. That was on the chimney or on the wood stove. That's another one. Go look. I have a whole video detailing that. I basically pull it apart, take it outside and clean it out, pull off the inside part, pull off the outside part. Look up Fy Nyth chimney cleaning. You'll find that video with lots of details. Barb Chester said something she's curious about. I know her property is fenced, but I wonder if the mountain lions, since they can jump 15 to 18 feet straight up, is it possible they could get over the fence? Not sure exactly how high the fencing is. The chickens, ducks, cats, and dogs probably seem like an easy meal for them. Yes, our fence is around the property perimeter is 5 feet tall. Absolutely, any mountain lion could go over that. So could a bear. They don't do so. Not that they couldn't, but none of them ever have. We live just out far enough from the base of the hillside by like a couple hundred feet that it's just open enough that most of those big predators prefer to stay on the hillside and in the denser trees. So as we get some more of our trees to get bigger here over time, we may have more of an issue with that, but I still think it'll be unlikely because in daylight, they would have to come in with 2 dogs in the yard, which just most wild things will not get themselves stuck inside a fence with a couple dogs if they can help it. And even interestingly, even very large cats like mountain lions will run from very small dogs unless they're actually cornered. They will almost always, if they're given the option, run away from a dog. And at night, the chickens and ducks and such, the kittens sleep inside either the shop or the barn, depending where they want to go for the night. I guess they're not kittens anymore, they're cats. And the chickens and ducks are both inside their secure yards, which have welded wire fencing on the top, bottom, sides. So I don't even think a grizzly bear could get in there, or at least it would take them a very, very long time. So it's pretty secure at night. But yes, absolutely, a mountain lion could go over our fence. There's enough of those different things that make them not desire to that they haven't so far. Karen Schroeder said, and a few people pointed this out when there was a video of the kitties drinking milk, that milk is terrible for kitties. That's another one that you can certainly look up for yourself. Commercial processed homogenized dairy is fairly toxic and undigestible by cats and humans for that matter. The milk they were drinking is, we have friends who have their own goats, and every now and then they have some extra milk and they'll give some to us and we will share some with the kitties. That is raw, fresh goat's milk. I'm going to blank on the gentleman's name, but if you're curious to look up lots more info about that, somebody did a study quite a few years ago now on on cats fed almost nothing but raw milk versus 2% milk versus homogenized milk, a whole bunch of categories. And the ones fed raw milk had excellent reproductive rates, excellent health, lived way longer than everyone else. But raw whole milk is something that does not seem to be an issue for cats. But yes, commercial grocery store type dairy is generally toxic for cats and people. Evie said, absolutely beautiful. It looks and sounds cold, not ready for cold yet. A couple questions about cats and chickens. A couple feral cats have shown up. For some reason, they love using the chicken run as a litter box, even though it's mostly dense grass. Yes, there are hundreds of other places they can leave their deposits, so it's not like there's a shortage in the sweeping countryside and hay pasture mere feet away from the coop. It's gotten disgusting. Yes, I'm cleaning it up, and yes, they're also using the dust bath area as well. I have to tighten up my chicken wire, only I find they'll have chewed through it. Aside from the seeds, I've stopped putting any food in the run area for 3 to 4 weeks now. How do you keep cats from using the run as a litter box? And are there any illnesses or diseases chickens can get from feral cats? I hate to think the chickens might be using a dust bath after it's been used as a litter box. What can I do? I don't know if I have a good solution for that. If you can have a chicken enclosed area with some kind of fine enough wire, cats can't get in on all sides because obviously cats can climb. Um, that would probably stop that. Our cats do sometimes dig holes to go to the bathroom in the same spots the chickens dig holes and dust bath in, because they do all freely range around, especially in the summer. Right now, most of the ground is frozen, so neither one can dig very easily, but they do go all over the place. And I'm certainly not going to say there are no things that can be transferred from one to the other, but here it is pretty spread out because they have a lot of space to do all that. I am not aware of any cat diseases that get transferred to chickens. They seem to get along fine, and I've just never worried about it. But again, we're not where they're all like in one little concentrated space doing it. If I had that situation, I probably would try to do some kind of finer fencing mesh. If they're tearing apart chicken wire, you might have to get something like a hardware cloth or something that's tougher that the cats can't get through if you want to keep them out of your area. Hopefully that's helpful. Frieder Farm said, hello, I've been doing choke cherry juice for a few years, but I'm worried that they've been adding too much water. It tastes fine. It makes pretty good syrup and jelly. They usually add enough water so it's level with the top of the berries, then boil it down. Looks like I don't add as much water. Are they making a mistake? That's a matter of personal taste. You can have more water, you can have less water. It's not really good or bad. It's just more or less concentrated, and that's entirely a matter of personal taste. You're not doing anything wrong. Do it whatever way you like as far as that. Robin Tedderton said, just rewatching this great video. Am I providing warm water for the ducks, or is the air temperature just that cold? I think that was a few videos back on one of the sights and sounds around the homestead one, where you could see steam rising off the duck water in the morning around the ducks. The water that they are getting is coming out of the gravity fed pipe from the spring. And so it's coming out of the ground at about 42 degrees, which is ground temperature here, 42 Fahrenheit. And the steam is coming from just the fact that it was 0 or below 0 outside. And so that makes steam. It's not hot water. Denise Jones said she would not like the cattle next to me. Don't they bring flies and smells? I always worry farm animals are being neglected. She can't watch any movies or even a vlog with farm animals. I'm sure they're being treated well, but she doesn't enjoy seeing them out in the snow or not seeing them with food. We take very good care of our animals, yet I'm glad we don't have livestock. I would say we do have livestock. Ours are just mostly small things like bees, chickens, and ducks. Cows out in a pasture, that is food. I know a lot of people don't live in the country and aren't familiar with how these things work, but that's what cows eat, is grass and other small plants. So that is food. That a cow being locked up in a small pen and fed grain, that is highly unnatural and very detrimental to the health of an animal. So I actually love seeing our neighbor cows when they do come by, grazing freely on the pasture and doing just what a cow is supposed to do. Do they bring flies and smells? Once again, if you put a whole bunch of anything, cows, people, chickens, whatever, in a teeny weeny area and all their poop piles up, you get flies and smells. When they are spread out a lot, you don't tend to. The manure goes to fertilizing the ground. Bugs and worms break it down. If there's flies that hatch in it, a bluebird shows up and eats the flies or the fly larva, and that's just not an issue. But if you confine a lot of any creature in a very small area, you do get problems with that. Kathy and What's Up Today asks, great video. What kind of quail were those in the video? They were a little flock of wild, not quail. I'm going to blank on the name now that I'm asked. Partridge. Gray or Hungarian partridge, I believe those are two names for the same thing. I'd never seen them around the old clearing when where I lived, but we're not that far from there. And I occasionally see a flock here. It was fun to get a couple second glimpse of them. They like to scurry around in little coveys, and they scurry really, really fast. They are about the size of a quail, but they're a kind of partridge that lives here. Jess Guinea asks, will we have goats? Probably not. I grew up milking goats. I like goats. Neither Clay or I consumes a whole lot of dairy. It just doesn't sit well with us. I don't particularly want to be tied down to having to milk an animal several times a day. I'm very familiar with what that's like. I've done that for a lot of my life. I really enjoy goats. Clay really does not enjoy goats, but I tell him that's because his only goat experience was he got a nasty, mean old billy goat that no one wanted because it was nasty and mean. And then it was nasty and mean. And he thinks all goats are nasty and mean. I think there are some very lovely goats in the world, but I don't know that we're too likely to get any here. Also, because even if we did both want them, we, as I've talked about in the past, we don't really have enough acreage here to provide enough grass or enough hay. We have too much grass in some places in the summer for sure for a couple months, but then we'd have to buy hay for 9-10 months a year to keep an animal like that on this property because we don't have great big pastures, and we're not sure that really makes sense for us at this point. Rita Boyle says, congrats on the tiny house anniversary, also on being married. Will our new house, 24 by 24 foot, have a septic tank, electric, and water connections? No on the septic tank. We love our composting toilets, have no intention to ever go to using human excrement, turning it into a toxic waste product instead of a useful fertilizer product. So we intend to use composting toilets forever. Electric connection is something Clay and I disagree on. I'd probably do none to the house. He would rather have one as long as it works. We will always have ways to do all of the essential things: eat, heat, sleep, go to the bathroom, cook food, wash dishes, wash clothes that do not require any electricity. But if there is grid power and it's working at the moment and it's inexpensive, and there's some luxuries provided by it, there may be some of that. Water connection, yes, absolutely. The gravity-fed spring water will be plumbed into the house eventually so that I will not carry water by hand for the whole rest of my life, which will be awesome. Gail Johnson said, I need to do shorts. She's not seeing our stuff unless she looks it up specifically. I can't. I looked into that a little bit. Several things here. I never started this channel to be like the biggest YouTube channel ever. I didn't even know that was a thing. I was just trying to illustrate a concept that was hard to show with just still pictures. And I was like, my camera does take these video things. I guess I could do that too. Where can I put it? Because I can't upload it through the same thing that'll let me put a photo on a blog. Oh, there's this YouTube thing that you can put it on there, and then people can see it that way, and that'll show what I'm trying to do. Anyway, I was totally clueless about how any of this stuff works. I can't do shorts. I looked. Their setup requires you to log in from a device that does not look like this and film it on that device and upload it from there to count as a technical short. It can't just be, because I look, can I just do something that's 10 seconds long from my camera? No, it has to go through an app that has to be put on a device that can take apps, etc. I don't own any such thing, don't intend to own any such thing. So that isn't going to happen. I know currently the algorithms are trying to make it work so that those things get more airtime or whatever you want to call it. I don't know. What I do is I don't go to a news feed for anything anywhere. I have people whose channels I like to watch. I go directly to them when I want to watch them and find all the videos in order and never rely on any algorithm to feed them to me. I think the algorithms are not showing my videos to most people because there's like 70,000 subscribers here, and most videos get watched by anywhere from 5 to 10,000 people, which is fine. That's a huge amount of people to be interested in, and crazy to me. But if you are not seeing videos and you want to see them, you may want to check if YouTube has unsubscribed you, because I've had multiple people tell me that it does that if you're watching YouTube. Or you could go to Odyssey, where nobody at the company unsubscribes you, and you can see everything in order. The channel homepage and look at the videos tab. Every video of 820 whatever videos will be in chronological order there for all of the history the whole way back through. So that's what got to say about shorts. Can't do them. Don't intend to ever own any of the technology that does that stuff. And yeah, I try to avoid having my life controlled by computer algorithms. So I just go directly to stuff I want to see. Denise Donaldson said, "Is there a video on how I met my husband and where we got married? So happy, watched for years, and so enjoy." Yes, I think that is called where I tell a little bit the story of how we met each other is in the video called something like Big Exciting News. It was one of the last videos before making the move from the old clearing to here, where I tell a little bit of our history. And no, there's not a specific like wedding video. We had a very small, quiet, private wedding, which is what we both wanted. Misty Woods said, "I have a question. Is the house insured? And if so, with what company? Sometimes I hear that with tiny houses, it's hard to get. Please explain further. Thank you." Misty, what you probably want to do is go to blog, fynyth.blogspot.com. I have 2 pretty detailed posts on insurance when I had it, which was when I still had a loan on the tiny house because it was a requirement of having the RV loan on it. I over time had used 2 different companies and I detail all that info there. I had it because it was a requirement I had agreed to as a condition of the loan. I never made any kind of claim, so I cannot speak to how it would have been handled had I done so. And I canceled it the day I paid off the last dollar of that loan amount because that was the only reason I have it. I prefer personally to self-insure by taking care of things, being very careful, and having my own savings to replace things rather than pay an insurance company. That's my personal choice. But for a bunch of years there, I did have insurance on the tiny house. And if you go to the blog and just look for insurance, you'll find those 2 posts and all of the details on that. Paula McNabb asks, this was on a cooking video, but I don't remember which one. "How do I adjust for the altitude? We are at a fairly high elevation here, a little over 6,000 feet above sea level. For almost all of the cooking and baking stuff I have done, I have not found any adjustment for altitude necessary. I am usually doing soups and stews and moist cakes and things like that. And the only main difference I notice in cooking is sometimes needing to cover things more because of our very, very dry air, which does not necessarily have to do with the altitude. If you are making very delicate baked goods, divinities, a lot of things with fluffy egg whites in them, meringues, angel food cake, you probably want to look up real specific adjustments to that. I don't tend to make those kinds of things. I dump and pour till things look right. That's what I did when I lived near sea level. It's what I do now. So I'm not much help with that. But if you want specific stuff for altitude adjustments, there are plenty of detailed recipes out there that will give you that. Gordon and Roxanne said, "With the way the world is right now, hyperinflation and soon possible recession or depression, is there anything that I wish I had already done or in place on the property? Thanks." It does look like there's some stuff not going great in the world. The main things, I could say, yeah, I wish we had everything finished in Clay's shop. I wish we had the little house built. I wish the orchard was bigger and the trees were 20 years old and super productive. I wish all the other stuff we had planted was grown up and bigger, and had been planted 20 years ago too, not 2 years ago. But for the most part, we're pretty much doing all the stuff that we want to do. Whether the world is rainbows and ponies and roses forevermore, amen, or whether things fall apart. We're pretty much have tried to set up our lives as much as possible so that we can continue to exist at a very, basic level that we both enjoy, kind of regardless of ups or downs in either the bigger world or as much as possible of smaller things in our life, that can go wrong and do through life. So I can't say that there's any great big thing that I wish we'd done different or more of or whatever. I just wish we were a little further along. But I always wish that, like I said, I wish that even if everything was always perfect in the world, that we were a little further along on the stuff we're working on. Linda Leo said she'd love to see, a few people asked about seeing my brother's cabin. I have got some photos and a little bit of video of that. And when I have time, I will get that made into a video. Will I be starting seedlings in the workshop this year? New house plans would be great. Ask about solar. They're now offering a 25-year warranty. Elk processing info update. Still looking for a new rooster. Is one of the current roosters non-related? Any plans for growing mushrooms? Is the small community growing with many young residents? All your videos are interesting. So let me see if I can not miss these questions. Starting seedlings in Clay's shop. No, it's not fully insulated yet. So things, unless I put a ton of effort into keeping the wood stove down there going around the clock, would freeze. I'd have to get, there's only a few windows in there. I would have to get a big grow light setup that used a lot of power to do that. So I don't plan to start seedlings in there. Hopefully one day we'll have a greenhouse that is actually set up for that, but not at the moment. Most of my stuff is direct seeded into the garden anyway. And for the cabbages and such that I like to start, have already started, I'm for now just going to continue to buy them from our local greenhouse for another year, maybe two. And I'm going to talk about house plans in a minute because somebody else asked a detailed question at that. Solar, I'd like to always have a little tiny setup. Again, I've gone into great detail on this in the past. Solar is great for independence and freedom and flexibility. I think it does not make a whole lot of sense if you're looking at it for, though that can vary somewhat depending what your grid power rate is, as a money saving or environmental savings. But I like having freedom and independence and flexibility and a teeny bit of luxuries provided by a little bit of electricity. So we'll probably always have some very small solar setup, but continue to mostly work to make most of the important things in life work without any electricity, period, from any source. Are not currently looking for a new rooster. We still have our 2 original ones. They're not related to all the first girls, and our 6 newer girls are the daughter of one or the other of them, and I don't know which. But we still have enough genetic variety for now. Eventually, if I can find someone else who's nearby who has another rooster, I would like to trade one of them out for a less related rooster, but I'm not too worried about that quite yet. Any plans for growing mushrooms? Yes, we love mushrooms. That is on the after the house, the greenhouse, water plumbed into things, more trees growing, etc. list. So we've got some big projects first. I would very much like to experiment with both growing some maybe inside in the winter in some kind of setup, and with maybe doing like a log pile that's kept damp in the woods by the creek, growing some outside ones, but it's probably not going to be real soon. Is the small community growing with young residents? There are a lot of children who live near us for sure, of our extended neighbors. I'm assuming she saw some of them in the sleigh ride video on the little community Christmas social I had some clips from. Some of them, I don't know, the community is growing some. I'd say it's staying a lot the same. There's a lot of elderly folks who are passing away. There are young folks being born. Some of them grow up and stay in the area. Some of them grow up and decide they want to go to a big city. The area is not, depending exactly which spot you look at, some are growing a bit, some are shrinking a bit. I think... Oh, elk processing video update. I got all the clips. We did finish that. I just haven't got them put together yet because I haven't had time. As soon as I can get to it, there will be one on the other half of doing that. Mary Riddell said, a question is, will the greenhouse be built before the house? No. That is because the plan is to build a small house on top of a root cellar so that we have easy winter access to a place underground to store lots of veggies. With the greenhouse, this is a really, really brief summary, with the greenhouse built on the south side of the house so that heat from the wood stove in the house could heat that greenhouse on a cloudy or cold day, and that heat from the sun hitting the greenhouse on the south side can heat the house on a sorry, somebody's trying to call me. I'll just have to wait. So the heat coming in, the solar gain hitting that greenhouse could partially heat the house on sunny days because it can get very warm in the sunshine, even when it's 0 or below. So to do that, they're going to end up getting built at the same time, if that makes sense. Kelly asked, how do I clean the stains off the Nature's Head compost toilet bowl? I don't have a good answer for that. I've never had a stain in the toilet bowl. I spritz it down with, a vinegar water mixture with a little spray bottle every time it's used. I've never actually had a stain, like I said. You could probably scrub it with a little baking soda if you have one. That's a slight abrasiveness if there's something that you need to get out that way. But I'm sorry, I don't have any personal experience to share with that. Mindy Me 77 said she'd like to see the brothers' cabin as well sometime. Also, a while ago, I did a blog post about money, etc. I think that was probably on expenses relating to living in a tiny house. Curious, without trying to sound nosy or giving out too much info, how I feel about banking, online banking, etc. these days. like I said, I do hope to get to putting together a little video of the cabin my brother is living in that we helped him build this summer. And as far as banking, I would say it's probably always been true if you've ever read much of history or the Great Depression or the last couple of years in this country or others, etc., that if you don't physically control something, as in it's in somebody else's bank or somebody else's cloud or somebody else's whatever, you're not actually in much control of what happens to it. SKM, maybe some of the dead bees. Oh, I answered that one. I copied that one in twice. William Burleson said, yes, he has a question. He went up to the highest mountain and didn't quite get the answer. He was looking for what is the meaning of life? I think I heard it's 42. No, I don't. That's a pretty big question. I think that was asked as a joke. I would say my conclusion is I don't know. There's many ways one could summarize this, but my goal is to try to leave the things around me a little better than I found them, whether that's the soil around me or the plants or whatever. Cher B said, what specific vegetables and flowers am I planting this year? Am I planting an herb garden? She figures if I can grow it here, she might be able to grow it. How do I water the garden? Am I adding new trees to the property? How do you water them? Pretty much as far as vegetables, I'm planting all the same things because I have been gardening in Wyoming for now going on 16 years. And I have learned through some trial and error what will and will not grow here. So even though there are some things we would enjoy eating, they don't grow here. And so I don't waste time trying to grow them at this point. So rather than giving a whole list here, because that would take quite a long time, if you go to the channel and look up the videos, seed planning, I believe there was a part 1 and a part 2. And I did that a couple years ago. I'm still planting all the same things because those are the things I've found year after year work very well in our particular climate. Every year, sometimes I'll experiment with a slightly different variety, like try a new carrot variety that I haven't in the past. But even that, I haven't done a whole lot anymore because I've kind of got varieties I really like of most things and that I know grow well. As far as flowers, kind of the same thing. If you look at the video called What's in the Planter Boxes, those again are flowers, a lot of which are also herbs and a few of which are also vegetables that grow well in our climate. And I plant the same ones every year for the same reasons. I'm not necessarily planning a specific like new herb garden area. There are a lot of herbs in the planters around the tiny house, also some in the garden, some in that one berry, berm bed beside the garden. I don't know that I'll have a lot of time this year to add any particular new herbs to that, but over a lot of time, I hope to get herbs growing all over this property, under trees and between trees. And pardon that blinking. That's just the hotspot telling me its battery is charged, and then it gets very annoying and demanding. So I do want to keep planting more and more herbs. How do I water the garden? There are several videos on that, using water out of a hose that comes from our gravity-fed water out of a spring on the side of the mountain whenever it doesn't rain enough. Yes, we are continuing to plant new trees as much as we have the time and money to do so. Water them the same way, either with, soaking them with a hose, or if there's a bunch of small things together, I can turn on a sprinkler with the same hose from the same water from the same gravity-fed spring. Strawberry Hills Homestead, they have a lovely place in the mountains as well. You guys should go check them out if you don't follow them. I don't know if they do videos, but I know she's very active on MeWe and has lots of good posts there. She's not sure if I want to get into or not, but she's wondered what my thoughts are on preparing for old age and the possibility of physical or mental disability. I might have a mental disability now when I dump tea in my lap. My throat gets dry. That is something we have tried to be thoughtful about as we build things here. Neither one of us is super young right now. I'm middle-aged and Clay's a little bit older than me. And I have worked over a bunch of years at various projects helping folks that are significantly older than me, and as they get to the stage in life where they do need more assistance. And so I think that's been really helpful for me to see kind of a variety of what has gotten hard for them, what gets difficult, and so on, because we do hope to, as much as possible, age in place and stay here and die here. Again, that's acknowledging that you never know what'll change with plans and in the world and such, but that would be our hope. So We have, I mean, this that would get to be a very, very long discussion here. Maybe I'll do a whole video dedicated to that when I have time, but trying to make things so that, there's not great distances between, say, the chicken barn, the shop, and where the small house will be, trying to make everything as much as possible on a single level from all of that one to another. Then a root cellar has to go down somewhat. We're not on a hillside enough, steep enough to put something into the side of a hill. So I don't know if we'll do stairs or a ramp or something, to because that's something I'd hope would be continue to be accessible as we age. Eventually, once all that is done, I'd like to. We have slightly raised garden beds right now. I'd like to build some taller, like almost say chair height garden beds, so that you could either stand or even sit on the edge and garden without having to bend the whole way over if at some point that becomes physically very difficult. But of course, I also want to do as much as I can, like I discussed earlier, squatting and bending and everything now, so that hopefully keep our bodies as mobile as possible. Mental disability, other than the basic, trying to stay physically active, healthy, be somewhat cautious with diet and so on to try to prevent as much of that as possible. There certainly is a possibility that if one of us or both of us had some serious mental disability that required a lot of, care from someone else, we may not be able to do everything for ourselves. So other than the preventative things that can be done to as much as possible reduce those chances, I don't know that I could do a whole lot else on that particular topic. Linda Green said, "Do I still clean houses and garden for people in the future? Do you think? Do I think I'll ever grow a farmer's market or a driveway stall?" I do still clean a couple houses for other folks as well as ours. Sometimes I probably keep other people's houses cleaner than ours, for a little bit of income here. The gardening, I have not, for other people, I haven't been doing that as much anymore. It's too far away from where I live now and too few hours. It just doesn't work financially for the amount of time spent driving, the amount of gas spent driving, and so on. So that's one I'm not doing anymore. Do I think I'll ever grow or a farmer's market or driveway stall? I don't really have any plans to. I mean, we certainly, when we have extra, like we had a bumper crop of carrots this year, I don't know, 250 pounds or something of carrots. We gave carrots to various neighbors and friends, and whoever would come over and say, "Oh, do you like carrots? Here, take a bag with you." Um, and I'm certainly open to bartering stuff with different people. We gave a bunch of carrots to one neighbor who gave us 6 5-gallon buckets fulls of apples off their tree. That was super productive this year too, because our orchard trees are all really little and we don't have buckets worth of apples off them by any means yet. But I don't necessarily have any plans to start any, more commercial scale, even a small commercial scale, stuff like that. Pascal Legas said, "What are we doing with all the eggs? We're eating them." Like I said earlier, occasionally we have some extras and share with some friends or family or whoever, but for the most part, we eat a lot of eggs. Clay likes to eat eggs for breakfast every single morning. I've never really had an appetite in the morning, so I don't usually eat breakfast, eggs or otherwise. But we also enjoy plenty of other egg dishes throughout the rest of the day. We'll do scrambles and omelets and deviled eggs and put eggs in cakes and, all kinds of things. So we mostly eat our eggs. Skytech Bits said they have medical stuff going on, so they think about other women more than they care to. Without any details, do Clay and I have yearly checkups? I'm gathering that you're going through some medical issues yourself at the moment, and I'm sorry to hear that. I hope for a rapid recovery for whatever you have going on. Clay and I both have a holistic not homeopathic. I'm not sure what he would call himself. He doesn't even call himself actually a doctor, though he is and has medical degrees, that we both have been seeing independently before we ever met each other, actually, in the area. And that is who we go to if we need medical stuff beyond something that we can take care of at home through our own, diet, lifestyle, herbal things, etc. Sandy asked, when I found the original parking spot for the home, I explained how we found that, etc. Is there an organization for tiny homeowners who could pass FBI background checks and have references looking for similar parking situations? She has a property in southeast mountainous U.S. with paved roads, electricity, gravel driveway, and on a small property near her house, only 4 miles from town. So this I wanted to I actually saved a bunch of stuff here. I want to read off to you guys real quick. If you are looking for something similar, there is several places that help hook up people who are looking for parking with people who have properties where they'd like to offer it to somebody to park on, either for extra income or for the reassurance as the age of having someone else present or whatever. So here is the list of resources I am aware of that let people make those connections. There is a tiny house hosting group on Facebook that has quite a few thousand people in it, and that is moderated by a few friends of mine. I am not on Facebook, but I believe that is fairly active, and a lot of hookups are made from through there. So if you're on Facebook, that may be worth looking up. There is a place called tinyhousemap.com, or maybe it's tinyhomebuilders.com/map. But if you look for tiny house map, you'll find it. That has people who have pinned where they have a house, where there's a tiny house community, and there are pins of people who say, I have a spot for someone else to put their house if they want to. So that's worth looking at. There is a place called it's also under tinyhomebuilders.com/tiny house communities. It has a map of various communities that has become a thing that has grown more over time. And I do know some folks who have their house parked in some kind of tiny house community. Some are just a couple tiny houses, some are a much bigger community. Some people like that, a smaller group. Some people like having lots of people around. Other potential options outside of private property, stuff like that, is some RV parks certainly have tiny houses, and there are various qualities of those. I know of several tiny houses parked in RV parks or trailer parks, because they're often, depending on zoning requirements, zoned in such a way that allows those already in a lot of the country. And yeah, so that's the main resources outside of like local connections or knocking on people's doors or that kind of thing that I know of for people to connect folks who have land with people who are looking for it. Oh, there's also I've heard of some people making connections through hipcamp.com, which is kind of like Airbnb for camping, basically. That's a brief summary. And a lot of those are more like shorter vacation stays, but I've heard of people making connections with somebody who's just as happy to have a good person stay there very long term. So that's another thing you could look at, is hipcamp.com. So hopefully that's helpful if you are looking for tiny house parking. There may be other good options out there I don't know about because I haven't had to look for a while in myself, or for ourselves here. But it sounds like you have a beautiful place there, Sandy. John Alexander said, do we have a root cellar? Do they even work in such a cold climate? No, we don't. Yes, we plan to build one. And yes, they work. Ground temperature runs around 42 or so degrees, depending a little bit how deep you go. And a lot of things store really well at that temperature. That's almost like having a fridge just above freezing. And so we do hope to have one eventually. Ruth Bowers said she's curious how the duck egg production is going and where do they lay them since they won't go inside. She loves how the ducks are always talking to each other and themselves. They are such characters. That is true. So as I discussed earlier on the ducks, we've only had our one single Mrs. Bertha Quack, the duck who has ever laid. One nice thing about ducks that I like is that they lay, especially if you're going to let your animals free range, they lay first thing in the morning. I do not know how early she laid for that whole stretch where she laid every day, but there was an egg every single day, and it was always laid before I got up, no matter how early I got up. So it was very early in the morning. But I've heard that for ducks in general, they will always lay all their eggs before 8 or 9 p.m. So if you have them in something like a secure run overnight and then are going to let them free range during the day, if you don't let them out till 8 or 9 a.m., they will have laid all their eggs. And so you won't have to go chase them down anywhere else all over the property like chickens can sometimes do, because they will all be done laying for the day. So that's a big pro in favor of ducks. Where she laid was wherever she was sitting, somewhere in the straw or the wood chip bedding or wherever. She didn't seem to have a particular, like, I have made a nest spot here. When I made that little duck hut, I was hoping that when she started laying again here and her daughters started laying, they would use that as a spot to lay in. Currently, none of them are laying, so I don't know yet if they will or not. They don't get up in the like chicken nest boxes because ducks don't like to get up very high most of the time. They prefer to be on the ground. So she did lay them on the ground somewhere. Ruth also asked, That it's interesting that my summers seem similar to her winters in Southeast Texas. Been experimenting with winter gardening the last couple of years. She'd love some more details on our summer freezes. For example, their worst freezes are similar to recent Christmas week. It got down to 14 degrees Fahrenheit. It was below freezing for about 36 hours. On the other end of the spectrum, it can dip below freezing for an hour or two overnight and up to 70 the next day and everything in between. This only happens a few times every winter between December and early March. How does this compare to my summer freezes, and what weight of freeze cloth am I using? I was really excited to see this question because I think a lot of what I can do in the summer here shows a lot of people who live in climates like that what you could grow in the middle of winter if you want to. So our summer freezes are every year is a little different, but we will often have, say, 2 weeks, 14 days or so in a row where it does not get below freezing. It still gets cool. Almost all of our summer nights are in the 40s or 30s, 36 or something like that, even if it's not freezing. Then we will, every other week or so, and sometimes it's more often than that, get a night that freezes, whether it goes to 30, 28, 25 at times. In I think last June we had a freeze down to 10 degrees at the end of June, almost July. So we sometimes get temps that cold. It doesn't usually in the summer stay below freezing for more than an overnight. It will often warm up during the day. Sometimes summer days um are warm, like 55, 60. Sometimes I've had it go from well below freezing, like 22 degrees or something at night, to 90 the next day, which is about the hottest we ever get. We have whole summers where it doesn't get above 80, but the last few we've had some 90-degree days. So that's a big, tough swing on plants. But it sounds like, for the most part, from what you're describing, that your winter is indeed very, very much like our summer. Other than there's just one thing to be aware of, that even though you're not that far north, there are probably a few less daylight hours in the winter. So some stuff will just grow a little slower because despite our cold, we get fairly long daylight hours in the summer, and that does help somewhat with the growth rate. The frost covers, if you go to amleonard.com, I think the website is amleo.com, they have their heavyweight frost cloth. It's the heaviest one they sell in a great big roll. It's supposed to provide 10 degrees of protection. That's the one I have. And I would think for most things, most cooler weather things, they would be fine, especially covered with that at something like 14 degrees. Now, if you have something that's more frost sensitive, I don't recommend growing your tomatoes and your sweet corn and your peppers and stuff like that through the middle of your winter, because even with that frost cloth, those are probably going to get burnt. That's why we can't grow them in the summer here. But yeah, most of the cold hardy stuff, we grow the, potatoes, onions, carrots, broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage, leafy greens, sweet peas, stuff like that would probably grow pretty well through your summer. Though again, the growth rate may be a little slower, but I'd love to see more people who live in climates like that growing more of that stuff in the winter there. Andrea Johnson said, "Does Burley go to work with me, or does he stay home and guard the critters?" Most things I'm doing, Burley comes with me. He loves to be with me. Occasionally, I'm doing something where either he can't come along or there's not room for him or whatever, and he will happily stay home too and hang out with the critters. Most days we're around the place most of the time, so mostly he's here, but he will go along with me. He just loves being with me. If I leave the back of the car open, he will try to get in his crate because he just loves his cozy little crate. Gigi Voichu asked, they said that love our videos. Here are a few questions. Will I see another cooking video? Or when will they see another cooking video? Maybe a short series of clips about wildlife from the new location. You'll get more cooking videos as fast as I have time to make them. I usually doing like 10 things at once while I'm cooking. And so when I'm actually going to do a video, I have to slow down a good bit. And so I don't always have time to do that, but I will make as many cooking videos as I have time to squeeze in. Clips of wildlife from the new location. We get less big wildlife right in the yard here, so there are less clips of that, which is one of the reasons we can grow and raise some things that I couldn't in the old clearing. But in general, it's the same area with the same wildlife. If you go to just the playlist of wildlife, wherever you're watching these videos, you will see clips of elk that are near here, deer that are near here, Hungarian partridges that are near here, foxes, etc. It'd be cool to see how I spend a regular day at the new property during the winter when there's less chores and maybe share that in contrast with a totally busy day when you have a specific plan for those 24 hours. Um, I wouldn't mind filming that, but I don't have that ever. So my life is very different day to day depending on the weather. Um, that is a big one, whether it's snowing and I need to shovel snow, or it's way below freezing. I need to break ice more often and pick up the eggs out of the chicken barn every couple hours so they don't freeze and crack. Or if it's summer and it's really hot and sunny and I need to spend most of the day watering things, or if it's summer and it's cool and breezy and rained a few days ago and I can spend most of it weeding the quackgrass that I don't want around, or whatever. I don't ever have a specific same scheduled day, but the closest to that I do have is if you go to the playlist called Relaxing Sights and Sounds, that is mostly scenes from around our property. And without a whole lot of dialogue with it usually. And you will see all of the stuff that I kind of do, through the different seasons. There's ones from the fall, ones from the winter, ones from the summer, etc. And it will give you a pretty good idea of what I do because it's average. I usually shoot those clips over multiple weeks or a month as I have time to shoot a little clip of something. But that kind of covers all the stuff that I'm doing at that time of year. So hopefully that kind of gives you what you are looking for. Are we planning to do any new projects on the property we own now? Yes, if you're joining in later in the stream here and have missed the first part, we plan to build a small house, build a root cellar, build a greenhouse, plant more trees, eventually make garden beds, get a mushroom starting or growing area going, etc. That's like a lifetime's worth of projects. So don't expect to see that all in the next few months. Related, Terry Johnson asked, what are some Clay and I's goals for the homestead in 2023? The hope would be to at least get a good start on building a small house. I would love if by next spring that was far enough along that I actually had the greenhouse attached to the house to work on. Again, that's going to depend on our time, money, the price of materials, and availability of materials. So we will see what happens. And to continue all the basic stuff, raising our animals that are here, gardening, foraging for wild stuff, canning, etc. I've got guests here. My brother came over. I don't think I told him I was doing a live stream. Hang on just a second. Hey, I'm doing a live stream. I just told people I had to tell my brother that. Oh, okay, never mind. And Burley is, if you can hear him barking in the background, Burley is informing me, somebody's here, Mom, somebody's here. Okay, we are getting, I can't believe this is almost 2 hours. I am trying to answer questions as fast as I can get through them. Conservative thinking mom said, have I planned our house and what type of home we will be building? Will it be a natural energy type home? She's always wanted to build a straw bale home for the 18-inch thick walls for insulation. Yes, we have a pretty good plan of what we want to build. It relates to the materials we have most available here, the kind of climate we have here, the building skills and kind of building Clay has been doing for most of a lifetime, etc. It is going to be a stick-framed home is the plan on a concrete foundation, which will partially include the underground root cellar with very thick, well-insulated walls. That is great for summer and winter. Like I said, it'll have a greenhouse on the side that helps partially heat it with solar gain, have a roof shape so that the snow does not slide over or onto any doorways, with an overhang so that it's shaded in the summer and less hot, and so on. But yes, we basically have a plan for what we want to do. We actually had the plan for pretty much what we wanted to build back when we were still property shopping, long before we had this particular property. Micah Ellie asked about, can I share my ideas around sex and birth control? My idea around sex is that it's a wonderful thing between you and your spouse that is pretty private and should be enjoyed regularly. Birth control, I'm not a doctor. I don't dispense medical advice. I personally choose to avoid anything that alters your hormones because far beyond the regular monthly female cycle, that interferes with everything from digestion to bone growth to mental health to weight gain to all kinds of things that just the human hormone system is not thoroughly understood, I don't think, but it affects far more things than that. So I would highly encourage people to look into reasons to avoid messing with that whole, so your sleep. I mean, a whole lot of things other than just having a baby are controlled by hormones. So that's often the first thing we think of. Um, so I recommend looking at other options, whether doing something more physically permanent for us. Between age and a vasectomy many years ago, long before I met him, it's been a non-issue here. But if I was needing to do something else, I would be looking at more of the, like, taking your temperature methods. These are things I'm aware of friends of mine have used. um, and Look up natural birth control. There's a lot of details out there. Off-grid homestead, Wyoming asked, did we finish processing the roadkill elk? Yes, and I do have a lot of footage from that. Simply haven't got it together into a video form yet. Cricket McClure said, how far must we travel to big box stores like Home Depot, Walmart, etc.? Have my parents visited us in our new location? Will you begin your larger new house build this year? Thanks for all you share. Love your format. So the house question I already answered. How far do we travel to big box stores? The closest little city that has stuff that size is a little over 100 miles away each direction. So that's the kind of place we go to once a year or so. Oh, which reminds me, back to the people who are asking about good sources for more inexpensive quality grains for mixing your own chicken feed. If it's not something I get at my local grocery store here, the closest little town is like 6-7 miles from our place. That has a grocery store, 2 gas stations, that size of town, but nothing as big as a Walmart or a Home Depot. If it's not something I get there, then that town that has bigger stores has a Winco, which is a chain. Not Well, they have a Costco too, but it's not Costco. But I think it's only in parts of the West here. I'm not sure where all they are. I've never seen one back east anyway when I was growing up. But they do sell a lot of bulk grains, and actually for usually better prices even than I've seen from Azure Standard, etc. So we only do a trip there like once or twice a year for anything we need to pick up from the big city. But if you have a Winco near you, it is worth looking at them for bulk grains, because I do, for both the birds and for us, buy bulk, wheat, lentils, peas, all that kind of stuff there. Have my parents visited us in this new location? No, my parents visited me once. My dad did. My parents together came and visited once on a road trip they had done around the West. I was part of going to one sister's wedding one time, but that was before I was in the tiny house or in this particular location. My dad was here for like a day this past spring when he was helping one of my brothers do a pick up a vehicle from across the country, and they came through here and stopped and enjoyed a meal, and a little hike. So he was here briefly. My mother has not been to this new spot yet. She's pretty busy most days with lots of grandkids at home, but they would be very welcome if they want to come visit together. And last question on this list. Gail Trent said, I was wondering, the same as Linda, about the farmer's market or roadside stand at the house. And she asked specifically, how are Wyoming laws with selling farm products? Wyoming has now a pretty good cottage food industry, which is basically the government acknowledging that it's not really their business if you want something and I want to give it to you or sell it to you, or vice versa. And so at farmers markets here, you will see people have little plaques that say these products are being sold under the Wyoming cottage food law and are prepared in our home kitchen. And so you understand that it came from someone's home kitchen. This is not USDA inspected. Nobody else is guaranteeing you anything. And if you guys continue to choose to do business, it's totally up to you. So there is a good bit of flexibility there in doing small home things, which is wonderful. But I already answered the question. I'm not really at the moment looking to set up any bigger business like that. Okay, that is my list of questions I had beforehand, and now we're at nearly 2 hours. So let me go back here and see what all you guys had to say while I was getting through that. I cannot believe that I hadn't even looked at any of this stuff. 218 people watching right now. That is crazy. So glad you all could join us. Let's see if I can skim through here and get questions. Sorry, the computer rocks a little bit. It's propped up on my big stack of books to make it a decent angle for this. Elizabeth asked, with all the physical work, have we ever had a back injury or any type of injury long term? How would you cope with all the chores? Yes, Clay and I actually both ended up with back injuries this summer because not because of physical work, but because that long period where we were both sick and didn't move and had muscle atrophy. And we both ended up with slip disc in our spine. That is something we are both still dealing with. Stretching back out regularly and working to re strengthen those muscles. Doing nothing is really bad for your muscles. This is also why we try to have things like I've always kept extra firewood right outside the door. So if you have an injury or illness and you can't go over to the bigger wood pile, you've got stuff right there to be warm. It's why I have food in the pantry, etc. Try to be, not that it keeps things from going wrong ever, but try to have as much prepared ahead of time so that when things do go wrong, they suck as little as possible. Sherry Honey said, what's the nearest fire station and who to call in case of severe medical emergencies? Does anyone nearby have medical training? Her husband would gladly volunteer. That's very, very kind of you. The nearest fire station is in that nearest little town, not too far from us, and 6-7 miles, depending which end of town you go to. And there's a volunteer fire department there. There's a small ambulance department, small hospital. I have personally gone through a WOOFer course, Wilderness First Responder course. I do not have a current certificate. You have to renew that every 2 years, but I had renewed it for a bunch of years. That is training I'm glad that I have. That was in relation to being far in the backcountry. But I think having some medical training around is a wonderful thing. And then we got lots of hellos: Virginia, Texas, Montana, France, Scotland, Pennsylvania, Alabama, North Dakota, another North Dakota, Arizona, New England. That's awesome. Canada, etc. I'm sure I'm going to miss people here. What will we be doing differently in the new house build? Mostly making things a little bigger, attaching a greenhouse, putting a root cellar under it. None of those things work when you have a house on wheels like this currently is. Hello to Germany. Where do the dogs sleep at night? Depends where they feel inspired. They tend to move around. They either sleep on the floor, in front of the door, on the couch, in front of the wood stove, etc. Pretty much wherever they want. Will I move my new house to build the new home on that particular site? No, that is partly why, as you see me walk back and forth right now, the tiny house is a little bit of a long way from the chicken barn and shop and such. That's because from the start, we knew closer to that is where we wanted to build. And I wanted to plop this where it would be out of the way for all of that, for however many years that construction takes us. Greetings to Denmark. Thanks for being around for a long time. Hi, do I do YouTube full time? If not, do I feel comfortable saying what I do for work? Mostly living. Lots of work around our property, lots of the wood splitting, gardening, for, basically doing as much as we can for ourselves. So we need as little cash to buy those things from other people as possible. I also personally still clean houses for several folks. Clay has a pretty full-time job. Doing property caretaking and ranch managing at the moment, and maintenance. It kind of uses a whole ton of his skills, but she's very good at. And any income that comes in from YouTube is a wonderful blessing that helps us get a few more things done here a little faster, but it's certainly not a full-time income. Hello to Maine. How big will the new house be? We've talked about something anywhere from like a 24 by 24 inch, not inch, 24 by 24 foot square place that would be about the dimensions of this if you just made it square, or maybe making it slightly rectangular, like 24 by 30, something that works good with lumber dimensions. Thank you so much, Kathy, North Star Prepstetter. I think you may be gone here because I know you told me you only had an hour and this has gone on for 2 hours, but Kathy volunteered to come help moderate the comments section, which was awesome. I'm hoping she maybe sees this later. I meant to mention that earlier, but thank you very much, Kathy, for being here and doing that. Hello to Minnesota. Solar system. Not sure if that's a question. Hello to the Willamette Valley. Let's see here. Jeanette would have been over there shutting the camera off and cupping the snow and carrying the bee back to the hive. The bees flew out on the hive on their own. I guess they wanted to go get some fresh air and stretch their wings and legs, so I didn't think they wanted carried back. Um, have I heard, Kelly, of people incorporating a paper scorpion in the hives to eat the varroa mites? No, I haven't. That's fascinating. That might be something I'd have to learn about. We have yet to see a varroa mite here. I'm not saying there's none, but we certainly don't seem to have a bad infestation so far. But that is fascinating. I'll have to look into that. We're thinking of getting goats or cows. I did kind of address that. We just don't really have enough acreage here in the climate we have to do that. Do we still have the dog? His name is Burley. Yep, Burley is absolutely here. And Clay's dog Tana is as well. If you guys are missing videos, I know I said this earlier, but I've had some people saying, I haven't seen your videos in a while. Go to the channel homepage, youtube.com/Fy Nyth or odyssey.com/Fy Nyth. Look at the videos tab. All 820 something videos, and the count keeps going up, will be there in order from oldest to newest, and you can easily see if you have missed any that you wanted to see. If you don't want to watch them, that's fine, but if you're looking for something. Tolov Redding said, I'm wondering what led to the choice of hive type for beehives. I wanted something that had a good space and a well-insulated space that seemed to work as naturally as possible and for our cold climate. Take the Ride wants to know where I got the cast iron stove, what brand and model, how much I paid for it. They're no longer for sale, so that's a moot point, but it was about $900 when I bought it for the stove itself. If you go to the playlist, there was a whole playlist on the tiny house wood stove and firewood. There's a lot of videos with a lot of details. It's a Gray Stoveworks Mini CT12. The company is no longer in business. There are other similar small stoves out there. Hello to Indiana. Oh, Bill, I was a little out of focus. Hopefully that's gotten better. On my screen, it looks good. Hi, West Virginia. Thanks, Kathy, for sharing those links. Okay, questions. Somebody said, no, you do not have to be LDS for the Bishop Storehouse. You can fill out forms to buy 6-pack cases of number 10 cans of freeze-dried foods, etc. Okay, I'm going to have to ask one of my many neighbors who are LDS how that works. See if that is an option here. Gillian, have I considered drones for photography? Yes, it'd be another camera toy that'd be fun to have sometime. I have cameras I use every day, 3 of them, and they almost all get used almost every day. It's not really in the budget right at the moment. Michigan Daffodil, how much does it cost per week or month to feed 21 chickens? Go look at the really recent video I did on mixing our own feed. I detailed the entire cost breakdown there by, I think, day and week and year. Will we ever raise goats? I answered that. Kathy, where am I getting the questions? This was the list I had accumulated. I tried to explain that at the beginning, but you probably missed it by asking on all of the different places where I have for people to give me questions, plus some that were over the last bunch of videos since I had last done a live stream and answered questions, and I copied them all onto a list so I could easily find them all. And that's probably what I'll continue to do for these different live streams, collect questions that people ask over several videos, and then a day or two before doing a live stream say, hey guys, any other questions? Put them all on a list, because what I'm trying to do is, now we're over 2 hours here, to get through as many as I can as efficiently as possible and not have to spend a bunch of time finding them at the time. Lots of questions about getting larger animals. Not at the moment. Penny said duck fat is so wonderful. The taste of the meat is not the best. Yeah, we'll see if we can try some khaki campbells and get a little better results for the amount of work and feed invested on getting a little better egg production, but we'll have to see. Hello to California. Let's see. Thanks for all the likes up there. I cannot believe that after 2 hours, there's still over 200 of you guys watching. Stevie asked about planning the new house to age in place specifically. I already talked a little bit about that. Will we have a good view of the comet? And do I plan to take pictures? Is there a new one coming? Back when whatever that comet Neowise or whatever went through the air. I did get some pictures of that a couple of years ago. I was not aware of a new one being visible from our area in the near future, but if there is, I'll have to look that up because, yeah, it'd be fun to take pictures if it's not snowing. Do we have any problems with wild ducks making contact with our poultry? No, I've never seen a wild duck on this property. There are wild ducks just a few properties over across some fields where there's a bigger stream and stuff. There doesn't seem to be enough water here to attract them. So I've never seen, I mean, I see them fly overhead occasionally, but I've never seen one choose to land here. Um, Answered the question about, I'm curious, Kelly, you're saying your Nature's Head toilet seems to stain instantly. I've had mine for going on 9 years now, and I don't have any stain on it at all. Maybe it is because I use that white vinegar in the spritz bottle to just spray it down after every use. Maybe they've changed what they make the material out of. I'm not sure what to tell you. Thanks for popping in to say hello, folks. Oh, it's nice to see somebody else with a flip phone. Let's see here. Several of these questions I already answered. No, the cats don't sleep in the house at night. They sleep in either the barn or the shop because they like to patrol for mice at night and be awake when we'd all rather sleep. So that seems to work out well. Do I miss Lancaster County, Pennsylvania? That is where I grew up. Nope. There are some very cool things there. I have never once regretted moving to Wyoming and never plan to move back east. I'm not saying there's nothing awesome about the place I grew up, but no, I don't miss it as in like I want to move back there. Ever considered getting a sat phone? I have used them before in like backcountry hiking scenarios, especially with kids when I was doing that for a job where I did that with teenage boys. In mountainy areas, they're not always reliable either. You kind of have to, and this may have changed now over the years as there's way more satellites up there flying around, but you had to wait till there was one kind of lined up. Currently, we got just enough cell phone service here to usually talk to people, which is all I use the phone for. Let's see here. Somebody else, Jack says they've been feeding their chickens cat food along with everything else, and they prefer that and started laying better. Chickens are not carnivores as in they only eat meat, but they're definitely omnivores. They will pretty much eat anything a grizzly bear would eat. I would think they like fruits, vegetables, nuts, grains, bugs, chicken guts. I think they would eat an elephant if they could get it in their beaks. They're always been kind of glad chickens aren't any bigger than they are because I think they'd probably eat people if they were big enough too. They will eat just about anything, but they certainly do eat meat and they really enjoy it. Of course, bugs are meat and they love to eat them. Let's see here. Hi to Northern Turkey. Another question on grazing animals. We just don't have the acreage here to do goats or sheep or something without having to buy a lot of hay for many, many months of the year. Let's see here. Thanks, Kathy, for going through here and adding all those links to everything. That is wonderful. I asked her late last night if she would have time to do this today after I already had it planned, and she was very generous to hop in and help with moderating because I can't read questions and answer them and read everything at the same time. And you should go check out her channel, North Star Prepsteader. She does awesome stuff. She is in another cold area of the world. And if you are not familiar with her, definitely go subscribe and learn from her as well. Will we be grafting any of our fruit trees, John? Not at the moment. We're still trying to get an orchard started with stock that we need to go on. Or need to get established on down the road, possibly maybe somewhere that would be fun to play with, but that's not anywhere in the plans for the near term. Oh, and Leaf Green mentioned this is true regarding cats, cat poop and chickens together. Cats on raw food diets tend to have many fewer pathogens overall. Our cats do eat meat, whether it's mice they catch themselves or fish guts or whatever other butchering trim and such we have. Anyway, yes, so that's probably helpful. How many acres are we on? A little over 3. Somebody asked, did our well tap into spring water? No, we have gravity fed water from a spring that's up the mountainside above us that is piped down to us. What part of Wyoming are we located in? The mountainy part. Thanks for saying our tiny is beautiful. That was another question. The brand color of the gray. I don't remember the brand. It was whatever kind of. I'm assuming they're talking the stain. It was whatever our local stores sold. Some semi-transparent oil-based stain. I think they would all be fairly similar. It was a custom mixed, very very dark gray. Um, let's see. Can I tell you who much? I think how much difficult is life in the tiny house in severe winter? I've been living here for going on 9 years. Go look at the playlist called Winter Things, and you can see how much I enjoy it. Not everyone would. Um, let's see here. Did I ever do a video on the elk? Yes, I just haven't got it finished. I'm sorry, guys. Let's see here. Green says stains on toilet paper. Powdered citric acid works well. That'd be something to try. What's the scariest moment I've had since living in the great wilderness of Wyoming? A storm or a bear? Oh boy, when have I been scared of something? I'm not sure if I've ever been really scared of anything in the wilderness. I see things going on in the bigger scope of the bigger world that I find scary, but I'm not sure I've ever found anything super scary in the wilderness itself. Let's see here. Looking for a holistic doctor. I don't know how to go about it. Seems they're not listed. Not sure what to tell you. I found mine through a personal recommendation of some of my coworkers at the time who went to see him. I don't know of a good comprehensive list. There may be one. I'm not aware of one that tells you where to find one, in your area. Let's see here. I'm located in the mountain part of Wyoming. Hello to Washington State. Let's see, I'm just trying to sort out which ones are questions. So I should have repeated this a few more times. If you got a question, put something in all caps so I can find it. Let's see here. Every now and then it jumps. And then I lose my place. That's why I try to have a list ready ahead of time. Hate that when it jumps. Okay, now I think I got back to where I was. Colorado Bird Nerd. Hope you have can find the perfect setup for what you want. Do I see my relatives far away via video chat? None of us really do that. I do talk on the phone to various family members, catch up on what we're doing. Elaine Petraeus. We don't have a gob of wedding pictures because I shot them all myself with a self-timer. But if you go through videos, that video where I talked about a relationship, you'll see at least one of them in there. Colorado Bird Nerd's got a tiny home community over 8,000 feet in Colorado. That sounds like a cool place to live. Let's see here. Where are the other questions? Hello to everyone here. Do I have any water storage? Midwest 19. Yes. Behind figure out which way to point. Behind the sink in that dead looking corner of the counter is a water tank that stores water in the tiny house. And yes, about growing sunflower seeds, that's definitely on the list. We grow a few sunflowers this year. I just didn't get around to planting as many of them as I wanted to. I hope to grow a lot of them this year. And yes, chickens are kind of like tiny T-Rexes for sure. They will eat anything they can catch. And they probably would eat an elephant, yeah, if you had it dead for them, so they had time to pick at it one bite at a time. Let's see. Yes, there are flip phones with 5G signals. Mine is not one of them. It just had to upgrade this year to one that could accept a 4G signal when they shut down all the 3G, which was for the most part the only coverage in our area. So our cell phone services actually got significantly worse. I do still see hummingbirds. I mean, not in the winter, Andrew walks, but they do still come through here in the summer. I don't have quite as many yet as I did in the old clearing. So we had a good number, but it took quite a few years to build up to that number there. I think they had to tell their babies and their friends and whatever. So hopefully over time we will continue to see more and more here, but they are not here in the winter. They come back in the summer. What size home would you have that would be bigger than our tiny home, Denise? This tiny house is about 24 feet long on the outside and 8 feet wide. We're looking to build something that's more like a 24-foot square or a little bit bigger than that. Thank you all for being here. Diane, do we eat eggs every day since we have the chickens? Pretty much Clay eats eggs for breakfast every single day. And I don't always eat breakfast, but we use a lot of eggs in other meals as well. So we do eat quite a bit of them. Now, if I am not missing anything, I think that looks like all the questions. Thank you so much for being here for so long. And hopefully that answers some info that you were looking for. In the next little bit, there should be videos that have been requested on what my brother's cabin is looking like, finishing processing the elk, probably more snowy, sparkly scenes around here. And I have like a 2-page list of videos that either I think someone would like or that people have requested over time, and I will film them as fast as I have time to them. Thanks again for being here, and I'm going to go get some other stuff done. You all have a lovely, lovely day.